Motion to accept the previous minutes that John sent around. Yeah, Barbara.
Move to accept minutes.
Barbara moved and seconded. Midge, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved.
Thank you, John.
The guidelines for the meeting are really speak concisely, be respectful of one another, and we signed that conflict of interest. Anybody have anything to report on that that's different from last time? Assuming not, we're going to go ahead. I took the liberty of changing the agenda just a little bit to try to be accommodating of visitors. And we're going to start out with the interim station manager's report.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Adam, the interim station manager. How are you all tonight? Okay. There's a lot going on at the station. There always is. We're getting ready to launch a volunteer forum. This is going to be an online message board for volunteers to communicate about things at WJFF and also things totally not at WJFF. It'll kind of be a catch-all for stuff that we need to communicate to people, how to do a break, or if there's a new procedure for bringing up fresh air, let's say. All the messages that are posted to that board are going to stay persistent, so they'll be up available forever, and they'll be searchable for new volunteers and for old volunteers who need to refresh themselves on policies, or if they maybe do a change in shifts. Volunteer Appreciation Party is coming up on Sunday. Everyone's invited. I hope you got the invites. It's going to be at Mark Schilgasser's home in Long Eddy. There's going to be food and drinks starting at 4 o'clock, and then at 7 we're going to screen the 1978 film FM, which if you haven't seen it, I highly suggest you stick around and watch. It's a very good movie by radio. We have an auction coming up, the Wonderful Things auction, taking place a week from Saturday. That's 1 to 4 in the afternoon in the Jeffersonville Fire Hall, where it has been for, several years, I think. All board members are encouraged to come and spend their money. Setup help is needed Friday afternoon, and we also need several volunteers to work the event starting about 11 o'clock Saturday morning. So if you're interested, email Andrea, and we're going to be putting the word out to the listserv and recruiting people for that. We're also hoping that board members will help out by making some food that we can sell at the event, and that could be a crock pot full of soup, a tray of cornbread, something that's going to be kind of easy for us to serve from and not so messy and easy to keep warm. Having something in a crock pot would be great. We'll give you the crock pot back cleaner than you brought it to us. Lots of upcoming events are going to make the rest of this calendar year very busy at the station, and here they are. The Volunteer Appreciation Party coming up. A week later, the auction in Jeffersonville. Second week in October is the chili cook-off at Bethel Woods, and we have a chef arranged to make the chili, and we're going to get some volunteers to man the booth, and we're hoping to sell chili mugs there as well with our logo on them. It'll be the debut for those. We're going to do a big mailing on Thursday, October 17th. That's going to be in advance of our November pledge drive. Saturday, the 26th of October, Halloween dance party. I'm thinking maybe we could get all JFF volunteers to have their costumes follow a particular theme. Might be fun, might be a little too much work, but I think it's going to be, Halloween is just a great time. For the last few years, I've thrown a Halloween party myself for money and have done very well with it, and this year I'm just going to turn it into a JFF thing, and I'll, give the money over to the station. So I think we've already got 100 people that will come before we even announce it on the radio. I think it's going to be a pretty slam party.
We're at now.
Probably Hennings Local. The Eldred Preserve, there's lodging, there's rooms available there, and I think we can work a deal out where they'll give us the rooms for $50 and we can sell them for $75 and even make a couple of dollars on that. We've been talking about doing another farm-to-table dinner, and the idea is to do it in early November and have it be Thanksgiving themed and send everybody who comes home with a recipe booklet for their own Thanksgiving tables. The last one we did was very successful. I'm expecting this one also would be. We start our winter Gift of Giving pledge drive Thursday, November 14th, and expecting it'll go for a week. Just about a week later, music sale, Youngsville. It's going to be a great time, and the pledge drive will give us a lot of opportunity to talk that up.
Is that White Sulphur or Youngsville?
Oh, I'm sorry, Youngsville, you're right.
Okay.
Let the minutes show that.
Have we contacted them?
We're going to do another mailing in early December and we're going to basically in mid-December, we're going to do another on-air appeal. It's not going to be a pledge drive. It's just going to be a series of promos, Facebook announcements, website announcements, encouraging people to do their end-of-year giving to WJFF to maximize their tax deductions. So on Wednesday the 4th, we're going to put the mailing together. It's going to go out in envelopes. And then on Saturday, December 14th, is going to be the first day we start running those promos. I'm sorry, Saturday, December 14th is a holiday show. A couple of days after the mailing goes out, we'll start the on-air promos. Then Saturday, the 14th of December, Maureen Neville is spearheading the WJFF holiday show in Callicoon. It's going to be awesome. And after that, we can all get some rest. And I think it's going to be a good end to the year, and I expect a big turnout. We have asked our bookkeeper, Barbara Donatelli, to temporarily take on the role of underwriting manager. We've been lax in underwriting. A lot of invoices haven't gone out. Some people's contracts have been expired for over a year, and we've continued to run their announcements. So we're kind of getting all that tied up, and Barbara's doing a really great job with it. We've already sent out a whole batch of invoices, and we have a good plan to start contacting people who've expired, get them up to date. And once everyone is sort of up to date, paid up, and on the books, we're using QuickBooks now to generate invoices for this. Where before everything was kind of handwritten notes, and it was tough to keep track of. So having it all in QuickBooks will be really handy. Once we've got everybody up to date, we're going to start talking about revising the underwriting policy and finding a way to maximize the money we can make from underwriting while minimizing the impact on air. Also, speaking of Barbara, she's asked, I'm sure I didn't bring it, that we sign a IRS tax information authorization form. We had some trouble with our taxes where we paid them and they didn't count the payment, and they've been holding on to some money of ours that they actually haven't, doesn't seem like they put onto their books, and they think that we're delinquent on our taxes, but they've just got this anyway. Barbara called to find out about it, spent an hour on hold, and then they told her, oh no, we can't talk to you. You're not on our list. So we just need to sign this form to put her on the list. Maybe I'll ask that we do a little motion and a vote to
Who needs to sign it, actually?
I can sign it.
Okay, so just
Let me know that's okay to do. Our FCC long form, this is the transfer of control that got kicked in because so much of the board changed hands, has passed the date by which a petition to deny may be filed, and none has been. This is great news. Barring any reconsideration by the FCC, highly unlikely, transfer becomes final late October. The CPB Office of the Inspector General has issued their final version of the report that we've all been kind of privy to these last couple of months. It went online a few days ago, and just a day or two after that, the magazine Current released a story highlighting the fact that they recommend that we be penalized. So we're out there, we're in public. This is out there now. Whether or not we will be penalized is something we're going to find out when the CPB issues their final ruling, which will be anytime between now and 6 months from now. And then, no, of course I can't scroll further. Wait, what if I do this? Oh, hello. We got some kind of bad news a couple of weeks ago from Earl. The foundation underneath one corner of our transmitter shed has washed away. And I have some pictures here somewhere. Lord. There we go. Okay. So this is right here. There's nothing under that right now, and over here as well, and it goes a couple of feet in under like that. Here it's a little shallower, and then on the other edges there is a little bit washed away, but nowhere nearly as significantly as this. Now let's see. Whoops. This is looking at. If you can, it's a little tough to see here. This is Earl's grandson. The damaged corner would be over here. So this crack here is staircasing up the building where it's basically sagging. This is pretty bad news, and Earl recommends and doesn't mince words about it that we pour concrete under here within the next few weeks, basically. The deal is that the minimum order for a concrete truck is 5 cubic yards. That's way too much concrete to do this, but this job requires more concrete than just a hand-mixed couple of bags. So we've got this pretty substantial amount of concrete potentially being delivered to this site where we want to pour a concrete pad next to our building. And the thought is, let's go ahead and pour the pad. Well, I emailed Dick Martinkovic to say, look, here's the situation. We need to put a cement truck up there. We've got to fix this. We're well aware that our future on the tower is up in the air right now. And if we pour this pad, we may not even be able to stick around long enough to use it. But my thinking is let's if we're going to be up there with a concrete truck, and Earl is not going to charge us to frame out for the pad to pour into, and they're okay with it with our acknowledgement that we are not a permanent fixture. You know, our permanency there is still debatable. If they're okay with it, you know, I say let's go for it while we've got the concrete truck up there.
Is this the side opposite of the county,
This is
the county's
this is
transmitter
the
building?
side opposite the road. So
Oh,
if we were to
back.
pour a pad, yeah, this is the back. If we were to pour a
Okay.
pad, it would go over here,
Right.
and this is the
Okay.
back.
I see. And do we know how much material it would take of that, 5 minimum yards? How many yards of cement? In other words, another question, I guess, is could we rent a cement mixer? Step up from the
And
real
DIY.
mix.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen a cement mixer outside of Kevin's house. In fact,
We have it.
yeah, there's one banging around that we know about.
Between
if
you
it's
and
1
me, we have
yard-
one that works.
We could do that.
Say again?
Is that a pad with no footing?
That sort of seems what it looks like, although this is not my area of expertise. I asked about what if we just, jam a couple of rocks under there. Earl said that pouring cement under will let the weight really fully spread out, and putting just a rock under there would focus it on one point. Also, it's been recommended that we use what's called a concrete vibrator to really push the concrete all the way under, which is going to mean we need to build a really sturdy frame out around, because it puts a lot of force on the concrete. We don't want to just blow the frame away and have the concrete go all spilling out.
Could I say a few things?
Yeah.
Well, I was actually over there on last Thursday, I guess it was 2 weeks ago. And I looked at the situation. The first thing I said was, well, why is the gravel being washed out?
Right.
Okay? And I looked at the terrain there, and I saw that there was you can't see it in these pictures, but just to the right, there's a big boulder there.
Yep.
And I theorized that when there was a big rain, it hits the boulder and then it splashes up and washes out the gravel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the first thing that I did when I was there, I had a couple of tools. So I moved the big boulder out of the way.
All right.
Okay? Then I took and moved a bunch of the smaller rocks so that there would be a channel.
Yep.
So that the water
Has a
would
place
no
to go.
longer be going, so that there was a place for it to go.
Yep.
Rather than splashing up against the building, right? So then I took a lot of stones that were there and I kind of piled them up against on this part of the foundation here. I made there was a bunch of rocks over here. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Okay, I took those rocks and I kind of piled them on here a lot. to
Yeah.
kinda build this up here. Okay, and I cleaned out a bunch of the gravel underneath there. And there was some big flat round rocks, and I pushed them in there
Okay.
and wedged some other stones underneath there.
Okay.
So it's supported by a lot of small rocks along the way there. And I'm kind of would like somebody else to come and look at it.
Sure.
And see. So, but my conclusion was that I had diverted the water and had supported the foundation enough to make any further work like not necessary at this time, because especially in light of the uncertain future there,
Mhm.
that we should, I think before we take into this project, we should have some other engineering opinions on this, because I think that, I don't really think it's necessary.
Okay.
I think I've stabilized it.
All right. Well, John Conley was also up there. He's Sullivan County Department of Public Works sort of
Okay.
engineer guy. He pretty much agreed 100% with Earl.
Okay.
But I'm happy to try and get somebody else up there. But I trust, Earl would take a bullet for the radio station, and I feel like if he says something is urgently needed, he's probably right. But if you all think it would be a good idea to pursue get another opinion or something like that, we can definitely arrange it.
I just have a question to understand then. Are you thinking of if you put a second pad to then to eventually move it to that new pad then? Is that?
No, the pad would be for a backup generator, a big,
The one we have at the station.
automobile
Okay,
size.
then if this is an ongoing drainage problem, do we want to consider French drains in any case for some kind of extra drainage? Because it sounds like Martin knows what he was doing and maybe averted the problem. But if the problem is going to be ongoing, maybe it's it's not enough to patch it up or whatever without considering something for preventative.
Right. Yeah, definitely the cause of the problem, the flowing water or the splashing rain or whatever it was that washed that away is pouring new concrete there without fixing whatever it is that washed it away in the first place is sort of a futile exercise.
Because normally a building like that, first of all, it's just on a gravel pad. There's no real foundation on it.
Mhm.
And they also, a lot of times, minor cracks will happen in a building like that. Probably any basement, they get a little crack in there. A lot of times you'll see those
Staircase.
here, there's lines between the bricks. It was pretty not exactly done right the first time, but I don't think that it's in danger of collapse, but it'd be good to have somebody else look at it.
I imagine if we're there long-term, some kind of perimeter drain around the
Yeah.
structure would be great, although it's basically on a ridge top. It's pretty rocky, so it's, we're going to have some expense of getting a backhoe up there, and I just think it would be great to hear from the county first what our status is, if we're there for a year or we're there for 20 years. But Adam, I'm with you. If Earl says let's get some concrete under there, I think the decision make is just, is it a do-it-yourself project, or are we
Mm-hmm.
splurging for 5 yards, and will the county let us pour a pad with the extra or not?
Okay.
So what's the will on this? What have we decided? We're getting another opinion, we're moving ahead, we're waiting for the county.
Yeah, I think we need to, and one thing might be to consider what the county has to say
Mm-hmm.
and look at that cost of 5 yards brought in, or even, if we know any concrete people that would, otherwise we're renting a vibrator from somewhere. It's
Yeah,
not a big
that's
deal,
easy.
but-
It's cheap. Yeah.
So can we figure out what our options and choices are and then see which way? Because there's one choice, as I understand it, that Martin thinks we're not in that dire state, but that everybody respects Earl's opinion, so that's a consideration. And then, so we're looking at maybe a second opinion? I mean, is that what's where we're going?
I've never met Earl, and I've heard a lot of great things about the things he's done to the station over the year. But is he an electrical engineer or is he a civil engineer?
That's a good question. It's sort of.
He's an electrical engineer, or he's not, I'm sure he's not a civil engineer. Okay.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, calling him an engineer, he is an engineer, but this may not be his specialty.
Right.
Yeah.
And I studied civil engineering for 2 years, so.
So are we saying we want to get another opinion? And then we're still waiting for the county to come back with their answer that we can go ahead?
Right.
They haven't told us that we can go ahead.
No, they have not.
Did the county, do they have an engineer that would look at it for us?
Yeah, it's there.
You know?
County-owned.
It's the county department
You
of.
can ask the
They're
county
in the
if they thought
property.
it was a hazard for their building,
I mean,
Well, they'll say yes if they don't have to pay to fix it.
but
Right.
is there more than us just on this building?
No.
No,
It's just
okay.
us.
What kind of time constraint are we on? Just the weather's, we're just waiting for, see what the weather's gonna do, or is there a time constraint?
Once it starts freezing hard,
Yeah.
they're pouring concrete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think good time is of the essence here.
Kevin, what's your take on it?
I agree with Earl. I think it should be taken care of, and put the pad in, because if we get into bad weather again, do we want to be another week off the air? I mean, we've been 5 days off the air. Do we want to take that chance again?
Well, to be clear, pouring concrete under this won't keep our transmitter on the air if the power goes out.
No, but the pad will.
Right. If the pad snaps and, the side
Well,
of the
the
building.
generator
opens up.
pad.
Next to it, then we put
Turn the
the
generator.
Oh, right.
So does it really all hinge on the county saying yes, or giving us some kind of a lease on life, or longer life?
We can certainly, we can fill this in, tomorrow without asking permission if we want. But if we want to pour a pad,
Right.
I feel like it's,
Makes sense.
it makes sense to sort of get their blessing.
Now, are you envisioning digging a foundation? I mean, down 3 feet to get the,
Ideally, yeah.
you're talking about a big job then.
Yeah.
See, it was just a concrete pad on a gravel pad,
That's not so bad.
you know, so that was not really, there was never any foundation built there.
Right.
Well, would it be appropriate to write to the county and say the board has authored the funds to buy the concrete, to fix the structure, and to pour a pad? May we begin by October 1st?
Yeah.
How long did Dick, was it before Dick was? he
Back
said-
in touch with me?
Yeah, it was like gonna be a week.
Week
or
and a
something.
half.
Week and a
Did
Yeah.
we make that building, or was that the county's?
I think we made it, but I don't know. Kevin, you might remember this.
I think we made it.
Yeah.
It's only our stuff
Well-
in there. I mean, it's nobody else's.
Does anyone have an option, an action that we can move this forward, or should I just try what I just said? I make a motion that Adam writes to the county saying the board has authorized the funds to get the concrete and make the necessary pads, repairing that structure and pouring the pad. And we'd like to go ahead by and give a date. Anybody, is that, or is there something
That
better?
is because time is of the
Yeah,
essence.
and
Can
say
we-
it because
can we-
time is of the essence.
Right,
and
but,
we
but
don't-
if indeed they say no, or we don't know yet, then I think the feeling is that we should do something, so I think we'd ought to give an option. Simply say that that would be our preferred option. If that does not happen, then the board authorizes temporary repairs to shore up the building until we can get a permanent. I mean, I'd love to see the pad go in.
What are we talking about cost? Is this 500 or 5,000 or?
No.
5,000, closer,
It's
it'd be
a couple
closer
of
to
thousand,
5,000, I
probably.
think, if we were to do a whole, dig a foundation and all that, if not beyond that.
I guess the other thing I'd be concerned about is suppose the county does say in a year, we want you out of there.
Mhm.
Are they also going to say, and take your concrete with you? You know, I think that's something that we need to think about, and so I would think we'd want to get a reading on that, because if they said, you know, no, there's no longer room for you on our tower, and oh, by the way, you must take your facility with you,
Mhm.
that would be a real problem. So I almost think that, you know, much as I hate to say it, getting stuff underneath there just to keep it from collapsing, although it doesn't look like it's an imminent danger, but to keep it from getting worse. And then I'd hate to put five grand into that and then find out that we didn't need to, or it was a bad investment. We
Right,
can
right.
always go back and do it. I don't know how much you would need to stick under there.
I kind of couldn't believe that we couldn't DIY this.
You see, first of all, when you just pour the gravel in there, pour the cement, the concrete, on top of the gravel, it's not under any pressure, so it's just laying right on the gravel. When it's dried up, there's virtually no difference than a rock that's stuck in there. Now, the cement is supporting that pad in 1,000 different places. But a dozen rocks wedged in there is not doing too bad a job. And if you say, well, the rocks that wedged in there, they may settle if there's, okay, but the concrete you poured in there, the same thing's going to happen. So there's not going to be any difference.
And
And
the stones that are loose under there
Hmm?
with the frost heave and stuff like that.
well,
That's the reason why you want to put the concrete under
But
there.
if you
You're not
put the
going to be
concrete under
affected
there and you
as-
get the water again,
yeah.
it's just gonna erode around the concrete. It'll just
Well, you
it'll just take out the rest of the stone.
That's why the first thing was to deal with the water flow.
Right.
That's the first thing. What's
Right.
causing the problem?
Right.
And figure out how to divert the water.
I'm wondering
So,
if
I
to
was-
narrow our choices down so that we can arrive at a decision for this evening, do we want, how do we feel about not authorizing kind of the full-blown project until we hear from the county about our longevity at the
You
site?
may not hear for a
You're not
long
gonna
time.
hear.
Right.
And because we've been dealing with this generator thing for 2 years, more, 3 years?
I thought somebody
can't-
said it was
Is
the
it
end of the
safe to say
year.
we're uncomfortable spending that amount of money until we have a longer lease at the site? And if so, could we organize a volunteer work party supervised by possibly Earl, Kevin, and Martin, and we get up there and we use the cement mixer that you have or Dick has, and
I got about 10 bags of cement.
and we find a Saturday and we do the best job we can with this. And when we hear from the county, and if we get a long-term lease, then we still maybe dig a foundation for a slab for the generator, and that's phase 2 of this.
See, if you made a slab, eventually, if you made a foundation for the generator slab, you could kind of tie this building onto it a little bit, and it wouldn't be as good. That way, I'm trying to avoid trying to dig a foundation around this building. But if you made the pad for the generator, if you made that full blown with the foundation, then that would be real solid, and it would in effect help that building.
Okay, so are you making that motion that we have a group of volunteers, including Martin, you, Kevin, others with equipment we have, to go ahead and do some
Just fill in the
repairs
gaps
on
here.
this?
Right.
That needs permission from nobody to spend up to $1,500 if
Whatever.
it needs to do that. And to report, and to do this and have something done by our next meeting, which is the 16th of October.
That's a suggestion that I think might get us out of the immediate bind.
And we don't have to
I
ask
don't think it's gonna
permission
be
for
much more
doing
than
that.
1,500 to do it, get it
I
cement
have a
truck, you
library,
don't have to
so
mix all that shit.
not to
Yeah.
kind of, you know.
You get 4, you're gonna get, the minimum you can get is 4 yards.
That's okay, we have a motion, that motion,
I'll second that motion.
okay, and we have that motion. Any discussion on the motion?
Wait, who made a motion?
He did, Kurt.
Kurt.
Did you make a motion?
Came out of Sonia's mouth.
Right along here, folks.
By way of Sonia.
The motion, do you want to,
Sonia was his.
Well, I think we were just getting, I'm sorry to not move this, but when we get to any discussion point, Kevin is suggesting that maybe for the same 1,500, we could get the truck up there pre-mixed. We don't have to mix it ourselves.
yes, do it.
But we don't necessarily pour the slab if we don't have permission. We just spoil the rest of it, or we send it home with the truck then.
Sounds good.
So
We can put it on the graphs.
So I move that we research the cost of a minimum delivery of 4 or 5 yards of concrete and authorize repair up to, say, $1,500. Is that?
And to do this by the next board meeting. And a work group is going to be involved in putting this together.
With volunteer assistance
as a-
to build the forms for the concrete or to be,
Are you willing to work
Be
on this?
carried out
I
within
think
the
they
next 30
mentioned these
days.
names of the two of you.
Yeah, well, sure.
And, okay.
the,
Any,
you could
so we have a
probably-
second?
I have a second.
And any discussion on this?
Are you willing to be drafted, Kevin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor? Counselor?
Would that include diverting the water or seeing where the
He's
water?
done pretty much of the water now. You may end
Yeah,
up
but
doing a little more.
it's good to have other people come and look
Come
at
and
it.
look and see where that water's
Okay.
flowing.
Before they're
Yeah.
done.
Okay, we have a second, and all in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes. Okay, let's move. Kevin,
Okay.
sorry to
That's
interrupt
the
you,
end of the
Adam.
report.
Just a question, do we know how heavy the generator is?
It's very heavy.
I see.
The one outside there.
Yeah.
2
Do you know how
tons?
heavy?
That sounds right. That's what
tons?
I was going to say.
Okay.
I'm guessing.
Wow.
Okay, any questions about Adam's report? Are we doing the school concerts again this year?
Oh,
That wasn't there, and
That's a
I know
great-
it was a really popular thing in the past. This would be our 3rd year.
yeah. We'll,
Okay.
Yeah,
The
yes.
other, so maybe we put that in again,
Yep.
because it's kind of popular. Adam, I had asked Adam and Andrea if for next time, we might have a volunteer coordinators report too, and Andrea said she'd be willing to do that. So you get a better sense of the variety of things the volunteers are doing and what's on her to-do list, and we could, so thank you for agreeing to do that. And we're having the reports as much as possible be written so that taking of the notes is very complicated, and then they can be part of the minutes.
I have gonna do one more thing.
Yeah.
Andrea, do you have those envelopes? Thank you. We're getting ready to release contact sheets to all the
Mr.
volunteers.
Thank you.
Oh, my good. Yeah, please do. Thank you very much.
Adam's tote bag.
Yeah. So this is a contact sheet for the Board of Trustees. It's phone numbers and email addresses for everyone on the board, as well as your forum login information, including your password, and the new WJFF bumper sticker.
Okay, anything else about, Mitch?
One other point about the upcoming auction.
Yes.
Okay, so there was, you made the statement, I think, and Sonia sent an email out about us bringing food or
Okay.
things like that.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna make a couple of big pots of vegetarian soup.
Fantastic.
If anybody doesn't like vegetarian, although it, however, will be fabulous, you're welcome to make your chicken noodle or your burger soup or whatever you want to do. But I
Cool.
think
Vegetarian is good because everyone can.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, hey, you know, it's a fabulous opportunity to show your culinary skills.
That's right.
So if anybody else wants to, we can have a cook-off.
Oh.
No kidding. I mean, kidding.
And so
But,
far, on that, we've gotten someone who's willing to cook a dinner at their home. We have rollerblades, we have 2 boxes of food that are going to be given as auction kind of items. So I hope you'll kind of look in your closets and come up with some stuff and get over to the station.
And if I can add one other thing in terms of that, at the trout parade last June, the library had a fabulous service auction. It was wonderful, and they raised a ton of money. And I mean, I won an auction, and I would have not gone that high had it not been for like the library or the station. So I think service auctions are really
Well,
good
what
things.
is-
So you want to explain that a little
Well,
bit?
What is
okay,
it?
for example, Lisa Lyons offered her services starting at, I don't know, $35 or $50 for a hike, an all-day hike.
Right.
And so I bid on that.
Yep.
And I had a wonderful hike this summer, and she knows the terrain, and she's very knowledgeable. Perhaps the most devilish or playful one was that our Tuesday host, going blank now on his name.
Sports
biker,
guy?
the biker, no, our
Charlie Sanborn.
Charlie
Sanborn.
Sanborn raised, believe it or not, I think $75 to be a couch potato. He would watch television and drink beer that you served to him.
At your house.
At your house. And I'll bet you Charlie would do it again for us.
For
So,
$75.
I mean, well, no, I mean, people were bidding on it. And I said, are you kidding? But people bid on it. There were other kinds of consultations. There was an accountant, I think, who gave a free hour look at your taxes or whatever. So you might be surprised at the talent we have among us if anybody wants to offer something. And they did it by just putting things on a couple of tables and left it out there. And you signed up with your bid, and then you went back and said, well, am I going to get it? And then you had to increase your bid.
Yeah.
So it worked really well for,
Okay.
and the library made a lot of money. So I was happy.
Anybody
We
on the
have
board
one,
wants
we
to-
have one idea, Lori McFadden will, the attorney who's been helping us will do that. The funniest of all was a few years ago, for $100, someone got Greg Schwartz for a day to fix anything that needed to be fixed. And it was wonderful. That was, I mean, you won't get that today, $100, you'd have to pay more than that. But there's computer consulting, things, so we could, maybe funny.
Can be
too.
simple things too, like your gardening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
clean your house. That's not so simple.
Well, that's what's
Not my house.
Okay, yeah, Barbara.
Just to follow up on something that was in Adam's report, the volunteer picnic on Sunday. I understand that we don't have as high a turnout as we were expecting. So if anybody is on the fence about going, please consider coming to it.
Okay, if we can move on.
What's our deadline then for the service auction? Volunteers
To
contact you
to
for
offer
that.
something
Yeah.
up for sale. Right up until the wire, really, but the sooner the better.
Okay.
Okay, Pat, how are we on the finances?
Yep. So I have a PowerPoint, I'm gonna put it in and.
Yeah, you have your computer? Oh, look at this. Okay. Oh, goodness.
Okay.
I hope I have PowerPoint on this computer.
I have another one of these if anybody wants.
Oh, hang on.
Circulate the apricots.
Are you making a motion? Again.
Okay, so you just, let's see, what's the
Yeah, have an apricot
you
and
just
a
tap it when you want
that
to.
ought to be a nice
Or do you want to just
Stick
do
it
it?
in the middle.
Sure, that's fine. Okay, so just, don't knock over, that's fine.
Okay, great.
Cool.
Super.
Adam.
All right, so, does everybody have a copy of the profit and loss that I sent out by email? If you don't, I have some extra copies here. You're gonna need that.
Kevin?
I'm starting for you.
Move the projector. John, you got it?
Okay, so there's two things that on the treasurer's report. One is a leftover from last month when we had the accountant who gave the audit. She had given me a form called the Charitable Organization Registration Statement for the state of Pennsylvania. And it's her opinion that since we now have an office in the state of Pennsylvania, that we have to fill this form out, that we have a studio and a location in Pennsylvania, so we're bound by Pennsylvania law because we're a charitable organization and we raise funds in the state that we have a space in. This is an attorney thing, so I'm going to give this to our attorney to do. The accountant doesn't do it, so we'll fill out this form and register with the state of Pennsylvania for charity. And now we're going to do a budget analysis. So this is part of the treasurer's report. The reason I did this was because I'm the new treasurer and I wanted to know myself where our income comes from and how much we spend and where we spend our money. And I thought since so many of us were new to the board, it was a good idea to run through this now because we also have to develop a budget for 2014 in the next month or so. So we did a year-to-date with projected analysis of where we're going to be. So you need some items required to complete the task. You need a pen or a pencil. You need a copy of the profit and loss statement that I gave you. And then I want you to create a third column on that paper on the far right of the form and write projected in it. So you have homework to do. You're going to work along with me. So your paper will say the January to December, which is our year-to-date, the budget, and then you're going to do a column for projected. You can take notes. Neatness doesn't count, and I'm going to grade the doodles at the end of the night. So our total anticipated income, according to our 2013 budget, was $351,200. Where does it come from? I'm going to follow along. I patterned this to follow along exactly with the budget forms that you have in front of you. We had some extras. Did you get one? There's some extras here. Okay.
What was the number again? 351?
351, 200.
No, wait, that's the budget number. That's not the actual number, right?
This is your budget. This is our budget. This is what was approved last year and what we based our expenses on last year when we developed this budget.
And the actual is what?
We're going to go through that today.
Yeah.
Okay? But this is what we budgeted. Based on our estimates last year, or the estimates of the board last year, on what our income would be. So where does the money come from? It comes from a laundry list of places, and we're going to start at the top of this form that I gave you, and it comes from fundraisers. And that's listed under benefit income. So we raise money with farm to table, food stock, yard stock, the ice cream social, and those items. We anticipated last year when we did our budget that we would have $32,000 in income from all of our fundraisers. Our year-to-date income on our fundraising of all of these activities that we raise is $17,341. We have several fundraisers planned. So we're going to do an auction, which is brings us a good chunk of change, the music sale, and there was talk of doing another farm to table. We projected, and the team that did this projection with me, I want to thank Barbara Demarest and Adam and Barbara Donatelli, our bookkeeper. We spent a lot of hours going through this budget item by item, and we discussed everything so we could come up with some projected figures. We projected $31,500 income by the end of the year from our fundraisers. And just to give you some perspective on all of these, we went back and looked at what our actual budget was in 2011 and 2012. So 2011 actual was $33,282. 2012 actual was $28,010. So we're kind of in the range where our projection is in the range of what we've actually spent over the last couple of years. We get money from underwriting. In other words, funding for this program is provided by our friends at So we anticipated $35,000 in our budget. Our year-to-date is $15,004. We project $30,000 for this with focused efforts of staff and volunteers. Some of the work to get our underwriting in shape, I understand Adam has reached out to Barbara Donatelli to help, and I think Barbara Demers is doing some of that also. So we've got a little behind on contacting our underwriters, sponsors, but we anticipate that will be done before the end of the year. 2011 actual was $36,752. 2012 actual was $35,000 and change. We get Car Talk donations. It's on your budget. It's not donations from Car Talk. It's Car Talk hosts encourage people to donate cars, and the proceeds of that go to the station. So we budgeted $8,000 for that in our 2013 budget. Year to date was $1,639 and change. We decided if we ran some promo ads to encourage it, we might get a little bump in that program. We projected $5,000 of income. The actual in 2011, $6,200 and change. In 2012, $4,800 and change. We get money from corporate and foundation grants. We budgeted $12,000 for that. Our year-to-date income on that is $1,400. Our team of Adam, Pat, and Barb are on the attack to get some of these grants. There was a grant that we get every year from the Jeff Bank for $2,000. I reached out to them. They put me in touch with the right people, and that's in process. We project that we'll get $12,400 for our corporate and foundation grants, which is more than we had budgeted for, a little more. 2011 actual was $22,500, and 2012 actual was $7,593. So there was a wide range in there depending on the activities of our staff and our board.
Should I hold questions for the end?
Sure.
Or?
No, I don't care. Question's good.
I'm wondering if the Fisher Family Foundation grant that I believe we were promised at the last fund drive, are we still waiting for that? Is that?
No, that came in. It just.
Did it get logged into fund drive?
It might have gotten put in with the fund drive.
Okay. Well, we can double check with Barbara Donatelli on that.
Because that was a big one.
Yeah. Because, another thing on this is Barbara has started to make some changes, and I think for ease of reading it, there's going to be some other changes that are suggested on this, moving some of the things in under like a big, the taxes under one umbrella and things, so we can change where it's positioned here. We get government grants. So we get grant from Sullivan County for youth radio. Every year it's a couple $1,000. We haven't received that yet. We get our Corporation for Public Broadcasting grant. We budgeted on this line item $93,200. Year to date is $22,706.
Do you know a reason for that?
I know one reason, I think, but we have to do some digging. We anticipated $90,000 for that. 2011 actual was $94,474, but 2012 actual was $127,472. What I think happened was that the first payment for 2013 came in at the end of 2012 and was applied to 2012 fiscally, and it should actually apply to 2013, which would put us about $30,000 closer to our goal. It seems that those payments from CPC or CPB come in quarterly or with some kind of a recurring pattern.
Yeah, and their fiscal year starts in October.
Right, and so that's what jumped out at me. That's why I put an asterisk there on the report for you, because it seems like we get 90-something thousand every year, and then for us to show in 2012 that we had 127 leads me to believe that one of the 2013 payments was counted in 2012 because that's when it came in. So we can do that when you're on an accrual basis or a cash basis. You can move it around, but we would understand and can change that. And I'll work with Barbara Donatelli to correct that. So we also have some interest.
Before you
go back.
I'm a little confused here.
Okay.
Is it coincidence that these two figures are the same?
Where?
The 93,000, or am I just not scanning across the lines accurately?
No, it is, it's 93,000 is what was, budgeted for the government grants, and then they totaled it as a total.
Okay, so so there should be another subtotal
Right.
up here under the 10,000
Right.
and, okay.
Okay,
Got it,
it's such a
okay.
line there,
Yeah,
okay.
okay, thank you.
Welcome. And we haven't gotten our Sullivan County Youth Radio one yet either, so we would, have to reach out to our contacts in Sullivan County for that grant. We also get some income from interest. We budgeted $13,000. Our year-to-date figure is $88.15. I spoke with the accountant about it because it was like such a weird, split between what we actually have gone and what we're budgeting for. And she said, we have investments. We have a big money market account that we have in our CD, and she said it'll come to us toward the end of the year, and there's also growth in those investments that gets counted in there as interest too, where it's not technically defined as interest, it's also some of our asset growth. And then when you look at what we've actually shown in 2011 and 2012, you can see that 2011 is $9,300, 2012 is $8,051. So by projecting $10,000 income, we were right pretty much on target with what we received in the previous 2 years also. We also get income from our members and our pledge drives and memberships. So we budgeted in 2013 $155,000 for this. It's a big one. Year to date, we have $86,380.50. We project, we had a long talk about this because, and I put that on the slide, we had a cancellation of the spring fund drive. And the cancellation of that spring fund drive has put us behind the 8 ball as far as the money that we're raising from our pledge drives and memberships. Your actual figures for this in 2011 and 2012 are showing $158,000 and $165,000. We're projecting that with only 2 fund drives, even if we really push on the second fund drive, we're only going to make we only can count on $137,000 projected. Okay. And that was after long conversations. Adam felt that we could make it a super fund drive in the fall, and then we do also maybe an appeal around the holiday times to our volunteers and supporters to see if we can increase any other money. But basically, that loss of that spring fund drive hurt us financially for the year. We also have paid public service advertising. We budgeted $2,500 for it. Our year-to-date income is higher than that, $2,675. We projected $3,500. We felt that we could work a little harder and get some more public service advertising in there, PSAs. The actual in 2011 was $2,400. The actual in 2012 was $3,700. So it's within the realm of where we've been before. We thought if we focused on that, we could earn some extra money. And we have some miscellaneous earnings that we have, tax refunds, merchandising, some miscellaneous donations. We budgeted $500. We've already made $744.32. We're projecting $1,000. We had some ideas about some merchandising, some mugs for the chili cook-off, or even some T-shirts or something that we can kind of merchandise around toward the end of the year, earn some additional income on. And so we were talking about that. The 2011 actual is $404, but in 2012, for some reason, I don't know what you guys did, but you had $2,963 shown for this. There was a tax refund in there, but I think you did some merchandising or something. No? Don't remember? So the total income budgeted on the formal budget that we're working with was $351,200. Oh, sorry, there's a typo there. It should be a comma, 351, comma 200. The projected income that we came up with, looking at every single item, was $320,400. So on the income side, we're showing a budget shortfall of $30,800 for this year.
I don't understand why there's a $200,000 difference between the actual income and the budgeted income. That's a
Because we
giant
haven't
difference.
finished our year yet.
Right, I see, okay.
It's showing year,
So we're not
the first
comparing
column.
same time periods.
Well, yeah, what the first column says is January to December, but actually the proper heading on that should be year to date. So this is September. So we have October, November, December to finish.
So the time periods are not the same.
But
The budget is a yearly process.
Yes.
it's, yes, 12-month budget. What you're looking at in the first column is year to date,
Which
Okay.
is about,
which is 3/4 of the way through.
okay.
Okay? So that's why we projected what we could do in the final part of the year
Oh, I
to
see.
get to where we need to be. So your one column is with the budget is what we have we approved, and that's what we're working with for this year. The first column is our year to date, what we've spent or what we've raised in this case, because we're doing income. Okay?
But it said January to December.
I know, but it
It's
should
We haven't
say
gotten to
year
December
to
yet.
date. We haven't gotten to December yet. We're
Yeah,
still
right,
in
okay,
September.
right.
Okay. All right.
There's a question.
Yes.
Well, yeah, it's not so much a question, but I just wanted to kind of insert here, you know, when we're looking at the projections, there are any number of line items where quite a substantial increase was projected for the 2013 budget over the 2011 and 2012 actual. For instance, the first one that Pat talked about was benefit income. And the benefit income was budgeted to be something like 15% more in 2013 than it was in 2012, without really any, from what we could tell, any plans or, you know, laid out how this additional 15% was to come about. So when you look at those projection numbers, you know, realize that those were numbers that, you know, kind of have come to us. But, you know, if there was plans or, you know, concrete intentions for how some of these higher numbers were going to be realized, you know, we're not really
Yeah.
privy to that.
I mean, this is what's important too for us in looking at making our budget for next year too, is,
Could we hold for 1 second to her point, because like that's what I couldn't understand, like do people just pull numbers out of the air?
Sometimes.
Because what,
we weren't there for last
no, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
so,
the
And
point
that's-
is we
yeah.
just have to do better.
yeah,
and
yeah.
that's the point I was making too, is this is, you know, good reality check for us, because in the next couple of months, we're going to do a budget for 2014, and we can see what, you know, you're seeing what our actual earnings have been in this part, and what we can anticipate in another year. So being real when you do a budget is really important, so you don't have any unrealistic expectations about what you're going to earn, so that you figure you can spend more.
Right.
So,
And you did it exactly right by going back and looking at the previous couple of years
right.
and making your projections
Well,
kind of based
and
on.
because we're all new to the board,
Yeah.
it's important for us to see, you know, what was the income in those, what was the actual expense, not the, what's the actual expense? What did we actually spend for that, or what did we actually receive for that in that income line in the previous 2 years? So we kind of, we're getting an education on what we can expect into the future from here too. Okay. So that's part two. Part deux. Next. Take a deep breath. Okay, here we go. These are our expenses. So on the 2013 budget, we're going to start at the top of the expense line. A, bank charges. Those are high. I was surprised to see bank charges that high, quite frankly.
Yes.
But I found out that it's because we use credit cards during the fund drive. So people call and use a credit card. And so there are fees for that. Nothing is free in this world. So that's why. And so our projected, we budgeted 3,300. We've actually used year-to-date 2,463. We have another fund drive coming up, so we're going to be using that service once again. We projected $4,000 to accommodate that. Actual usage was interesting to me. 2011, $3,200 and change. 2012, $3,200 too. Fees for the use of credit cards during the fund drive. Yes.
Just a question. I thought our new credit consumer protection board was going to address the issues of excessive credit card costs. The difference being that, and I'm not sure, but I know the question's out there, using debits, they were most interested that you not have the same charge with a debit. So if we could find that out, if we say to somebody, if we're going to continue with credit cards, will you give us a debit instead of a
Right,
credit, because
right.
the fee could be less,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah. And it could be, we should look into that. There's a couple of things on the expense side that I think you would, before we actually do a 2014 budget, that we look into, because there are a couple of things that just didn't make sense to me. I didn't, I just thought maybe we could look at them more carefully.
The other thing is, when it comes to things like the music sale or the auction, if people can give us a check rather than a credit card as they're checking out, encouraging that also helps to diminish the fees.
Okay, then benefit expenses, we budgeted, and I'm not entirely sure, maybe you can explain this, Adam, the expenses associated with the benefit income that we get?
This year, the farm-to-table dinner had a pretty substantial expense.
Okay.
It was offset by benefit underwriting, which has its own line on the board, on the budget here. That was the big benefit
It
expense.
costs us money to do the fund drive too, there's some underlying expenses there.
Yep.
So this is kind of an aggregate total of, or what it costs us to,
It's like hall rental and
Doesn't that come out of
supplies
the
for.
total earnings? You wouldn't count.
it's, no, because
So
your,
that-
your expenses are one thing and your earnings are another, and it evens out at the end when you add and subtract everything up, but, you don't deduct it, at that point. You do all your income in one place and all your expenses in the other.
But then you may be thinking that a benefit really earns you more money than it really does.
Well, unless you look
Should
at the
be
entire
itemized.
budget, yeah. You could itemize each, and we were talking about itemizing each activity, and we did talk about that, where we take
much does it cost
farm
to
to
do?
table, and we look at farm to table, all of the expenses associated with farm to table on either side, and whether or not, in the end,
How much you
it's
really
how
make.
much you're really making on that.
Okay.
And with that, we'll take a little time to get us into that, but it's definitely one of the things we talked about. Board training, there was zero money in the budget for that in 2013, and yet there was a year-to-date expenditure of $1,114.86. So we needed to project enough money to cover that expense in the budget, so we put in 1,115. I understand there was some board training sometime last winter, or this past winter, before the troubles, as they say in Ireland.
And a perfect sweater for it.
Yeah, right, okay. So, actual board training, though, was interesting to see that there were line budgeted items for board training in 2011 and 2012, and so I think that it could be something that when we do 2014 budget, we may want to consider some board training and be specific on what kind of training we would like to have and put that into the budget, because I think it's good for us to be learning more and more. There's no change in bonuses. It's $150. I believe it's for the people who do work for us, clean the office or whatever, a Christmas bonus or something. The other one, I lumped this together: broadcast cable, broadcast equipment, broadcast supplies. They're in 3 different line items there. So the total of this is $19,000. $7,000 of it's for cable. That's the cost of taking our signal and putting it on the cable lines and taking it to the tower. 8 of it is budgeted for equipment. We haven't really spent a huge amount on equipment this year, but we have that money in the budget if we wanted to do that. And 4 of it is on supplies. Theoretically, what we're talking about with building up at the tower, the money is here to pay for that. It's in our budget and it's here. Year to date, from the $19,000 that we budgeted, we've only spent $8,600. We projected no change on that and left the budget expense at $19,000. 2011 actual was 10. 2012 actual was 10 and change too. There is additional money that was added in for the 2013 budget because there was an increase specifically for equipment of $7,500
For Homestead?
for here. I shouldn't say that. There was, in the 2013 budget, the difference between 2012 and 2013 was there was a $7,500 increase for equipment in the 2013 budget. Whether that was done to answer some concerns of people who thought we spent an awful lot of money in Honesdale, we didn't spend any money in Jeffersonville, and we needed to upgrade equipment in Jeffersonville, makes sense to me that they answered those concerns, but we don't know. But just to let you know that the money that was in the budget for equipment was increased from 212 to 213.
Yeah, when we look at these numbers, broadcast equipment, broadcast supplies, is it broken out between Jeff and Honesdale, or it's all lumped together? Okay.
Lumped together.
Okay.
Although Barbara Donatelli told me that the Honesdale things are kept separately, but I don't see, I see some of the other expenses kept separately for Honesdale, but I didn't see all of that. And that's something that I want to work on before we do the 214 budget, so that we can actually separate Honesdale out with all of its separate items, so that we can move that over and we know exactly what that station or that satellite location is costing us.
There's a lot of places where more granularity.
Oh yeah,
is gonna
yeah,
help us going
yeah.
forward.
And this program that Barbara's using is QuickBooks, and it's really very easy for her to kind of reorganize things and do them the way we want to. So it's not a difficult computer program to work on. Other expenses, there was conference expense in the budget for 2000. Year to date was $716. We projected to leave it at $2,000. We looked at the actuals from the previous 2 years. It didn't seem anybody went to conferences, but I kind of like the idea of sending officers and staff to conferences to learn more. So I think we should keep it in 214, but we can deal with that when we get to 214.
Does that mean that you two went to San Francisco for $700?
Something's wrong with that. I mean,
It could be that could have been that the conference expenses there, but there's a travel line item
Right.
also.
Yeah.
And it could be that it was separated out, and I'm not sure, so that's another place where we might want to go in and clarify that, to put the total expense in. But that's just the way it is here, and so we'll look at that. Donor appreciation. We budgeted $1,000. Year to date was $0. We're projecting $1,000 because I think Adam had some ideas about what we could do for some donor appreciation things, and there was no money in the budget though for it in 2011 and 2012. Either there was and they didn't spend it, or there was just nothing expended in those 2 years. Whether or not we want to, when we get to the very end of this, you're going to see that there is a shortfall, even where we were able to squirrel some money from the expenses, and we may want to go back, but we didn't want to when we were doing this projections. We didn't want to cobble the organization at this point in the year. Expenses, dues and publications. This goes to NPR, NFCB. There's a laundry list on your budget about this. There's budgeted $59,000. Our year-to-date expenditures were $32,950. We projected $59,000 with no change. We looked at the actuals from 211 and 212. 211 was 57.8. 212 was 58.7. We're right. I think we're right in target with where we've been in the past. Fundraising, another one budgeted $5,000. Oh, sorry.
On my sheet I'm looking at, it says 55,000 for dues.
Because it went on the second page and it was dues and publications.
Oh, and publications you put together.
Okay, on this next
Got
page
it, got
here.
it, got it. I was just looking at dues.
It kind of carried
Okay.
over. So I kind of clumped it together for the purpose of this.
Do we have quarterly bills still coming? That's why we're short right now of what we would.
Yeah. And the NPR things, some of them are paid, for the year in advance, and some are paid like quarterly, or is it all different with Pacifica or this one or that one, or?
It's different networks, different arrangements.
Okay.
NPR specifically,
I think we'll get billed quarterly.
Okay. And I noticed there was an agency there, he handles some things too, Ken Mills Agency.
has to do, I think, with ASCAP. It's in the same lines as ASCAP BMI. It's music licensing that we have to pay in order to be able to play the music that we want to play on the air, basically.
I was wondering where that
That's
came out
Spinatron
of.
too? Isn't that like Spinatron?
Not exactly.
We don't pay for Spinatron.
Spinatron we pay for. Spinatron's just a service that helps us enter in the playlists that we need to submit.
Fundraising, we budgeted $5,000 for it. We've spent to date $1,800 basically. We kept the same figure, projecting $5,000. We did that because we looked at what the 2011 and 2012 actuals were, and they were close to $5,000 each. Honesdale, item J. Honesdale was budgeted, we budgeted $8,000 for that. The year-to-date expenditures on that are $4,900. We kept the same projection at $8,000. The 2012 actuals on Honesdale were $6,065. So there may be some wiggle room in there, but we don't know enough about, I didn't know enough and Barbara didn't about Honesdale at this point, so we left it that way. Honesdale gets their telephone by some kind of a jack.
Yeah.
A magic jack or something. Okay.
ISP.
Yeah, so they don't have they're not part of the phone bill thing or something, and but they and I'm not sure if the internet bills that we get include some of that money too, but I have to go back and separate it out. There's supplies, household supplies, cleaning supplies that we use. $1,200. We didn't leave any change on that. We left that without a change because we need to be able to buy the stuff that we need to keep everything clean, the toilet paper and the paper towels and stuff. There is a in lieu of taxes line, and I just ask you to keep that in mind because I moved it below, and I'm going to have Barbara Donatelli move it into the tax section, but I did mention it, so we'll skip over that at this point. Independent contractors. There's a list of independent contractors on here that are all bundled into this one section. So it's accounting and bookkeeping. Accounting and database was changed because we moved something into another position with Barbara Donatelli, or
John Bachman had actually been handling accounting database, and that got passed to Andrea.
Okay, and the database was part of keeping track of our volunteers and the
Of our donors.
Of our donors. And so that was changed and reduced a lot. There's also engineering, 2 engineering line items in that for Dirk and Earl Meitzel. And there's also news reporter and youth radio in the contractors also. So we pay money to for the news, the local news, on a contract with River Reporter. And we have a youth radio expenditure there. Now, remember we had some income from youth radio from the county on our income side, but our expense on youth radio is higher than our income is on that. But we probably have a bunch of sponsors that help us with that too. So the budgeted 38.5, our year to date is 22. We're projecting we can save some money on that line to 32.5. There were no figures on that for actuals expenses in 2011 and 2012. There was a change in that too because I think we had an issue with an employee who was improperly classified as an independent contractor for a while, and then that was changed. So perhaps that's why there were no figures for that.
Has Earl billed no hours this whole year?
No billing from Earl, no billing from Dirk. And we had some things. We have money in the budget for that. There's $5,000 actually in the budget for them. So as we do this project up at the tower, we may want to keep track of some hours there. Insurance expenditure, we budgeted 19. We've done 15 for the year to date. So we're projecting the $19,000. The 211 actual was $21,931. Under the insurance, remember that we had a contract with our former station manager that continues his insurance for a period of time. And so our insurance was actually a little higher, I think, and so we may want to relook at that. Under internet, we budgeted $2,400. We've spent year-to-date $3,517. I don't know why we projected $4,000 to cover that. I also see that the 2012 actual was $3,712, even though we budgeted $2,400 for that then. So it's showing that it's over budget for the last 2 years, and I'm going to pull that apart and see if some of that goes back to Honesdale, which would make some sense to me, and that it needs to be separated out and clarified in some way. Legal and professional services, we had budgeted $2. Traditionally, we don't use that. This year we have, year to date, $7,600 or $7,700. Yeah, we have to look at that, especially when you look at telephone too. Why aren't we doing them both?
The two of them together
are
both really high.
The two of them together are a red flag, but we'll get to that when we get down to the telephone. So we budgeted $8,500. We projected $8,500 for our legal expense. Maybe low. When we did the projections, we did this a month or so ago, and when I got the year to date now, it's higher, so that we may have to go back and look at that. But the actual expense for legal in 2012 was $1,500. So when we went into the troubles, we spent more money. Under office equipment, supplies, and expenses, we budgeted $4,500. We've spent almost $2,000. 2012 actual was $2,600. We left it at $4,500 projected because we figured you don't know if you need a new computer or a new printer or something. We don't want to cobble us. Payroll was $126. That was budgeted. Year to date is $91. At that rate, we're projected for the $126,000. The reality is that we had a severance package that we paid, or we're down an employee, but we also, because Adam and Andrea had to assume more work, we changed their salaries to accommodate the extra work that they were doing for us to help us through that part. But we also had a severance in there. So we're not really going to save any money this year on payroll because of that. Pension was budgeted at $5,000. Year to date is $833. We're projecting $300. The 2012 actual was the $500.
3,000, right?
3,000, sorry. The 2012 actual was $5,000. I'm not sure that we've had a conversation with Adam and Andrea about the pension plan, but I know, I'm pretty sure that our former station manager had that. So that's why we left the projected in at $3,000, so that we could have a conversation with Adam and Andrea about establishing that if the board thinks that that's important to do for them. Other expenses, postage, shipping, promotion, publicity, I bundled them all up in one station. They're all on different lines for you. It's kind of all small items, but it was $4,500 total budgeted. We've spent $2,300 or $2,400 almost. So we kept it at $4,500 projected. Our actual for 2012 was $3,000. So there may be some room for savings in there, but we left it where it was. It would be nice, some of these places, if we can pick up $1,000 here, $1,000 here, $1,000 here, to help us offset our shortfall at the end of the year. Real estate taxes also is that in lieu of that we had, and the sewer tax. I put them all together. The in lieu of payment is for the station, the building. So our station building is built on someone else's property. And so the person whose property it is gets a tax bill for the improvement that we own. And so we give them back a portion, it's been allocated, of the money to pay the taxes for that improvement on their property. Yes.
Your building's tax exempt.
Okay.
The land is taxed.
Okay.
And that's passed through to the state. Yes.
So the portion of the land that we're using.
Yes, the building really is tax exempt.
So we budgeted $5,100 for that. Year to date is $4,592. We left the projected at $5,100. The actual in 2012 was 48.9, so it was 4,900. So we figured we were pretty strong there between the projected and the actual. Repairs and maintenance, $8,000 was budgeted. Year to date is $5,400. We're projecting $10,000 based on some conversations that we've had in the last couple of board meetings, particularly about the greenhouse. So we bumped that up a little bit to accommodate the needs of the properties that we own to make sure we keep them in good condition. The actual in 2012 was $5,283. Telephone, the budget was $3,000. Our year to date is $2,474. We projected it at $3,000. The 2012 actual was $4,231. And this again goes back to the raises that red flag to me, because I'm thinking that the telephone and the internet should be bundled, should be costing us less money, and it may be that it's Honesdale also in here, but it's not separated out, but we don't know. It means just doing some more digging and more information before we do the 2014 budget, so we know exactly what we're doing. Travel, $3,500, year to date, $970. I think that was the conference. The other part of the conference was one was the conference registration, one was the travel tickets. We projected $1,500 on that budget item. So you're not allowed to go any place. Only has $600 left in your travel budget for the rest of the year. Actual expense in 2012 was $517. We're almost to the end. Utilities, big item, $22,000, and so it was all broken up on electric, the house and the hydro, or the house and the station and the hydro. The big one is the tower. There's $11,000 budget. So the tower uses a lot of electric, which bumped us up. And then fuel, of course, gas and fuel for the greenhouse, and water is included in that also. So we have metered water on the greenhouse, metered water, I guess we get billed on the station. It says other. I'm not sure that it might not be Honesdale, but I don't know. So again, we'll go through that and break apart all of those. I had asked Barbara Donatelli a boatload of questions she was able to help me with, and some of these we just have to get more information on. So we're projecting $20,100 on the utilities. The actual in 2012 was $18,600 about. Volunteer appreciation is our last budget item. We budgeted $2,000 for that. Year to date, we've spent $158.
That's not much appreciation.
I know. But the year's not over.
Well spent.
So we left the projection at $2,000. In 2012, there was an actual expense of $1,217. I don't know what for. So,
Sweatshirts.
could have been. I don't know. Maybe you bought sweatshirts. All right. So the projected expenses that we came up with when we went through this budget, took us through the end of the year, total $348,165. The projected income that we have from our work on that budget was $320,400. Our projected shortfall for the year was $27,765. We have a savings account, we have a CD, and we have an investment account. We can weather this this time, but the loss of that fund drive was a big blow to us. We'll survive it, but we just need to be aware of the impact that it had on the station, on our projected figures. Okay.
We could sell that boat.
We have to sell the boat. It's one of my projects, is sell the damn boat. I don't know if we're getting $19,000 for it.
Chickens come with the boat.
Does anybody have any other questions on this? I can make this, give this to Adam, the PowerPoint, if you want to keep it, if anybody would like to use it. In fact, if you want to download it from here and then give me back the thumb drive, that would be okay. And then the notes that you take on this, then we just, we're gonna start a 2014 budget in November. In fact, we're gonna start it and finish it in November. So that you all are kind of geared toward that, now that you understand where our money comes from and where we'll be spending it this time. Okay, thanks.
That's great, Pat. Thank you.
Absolutely wonderful, thank you. We have questions from the board, but also from now comments.
A huge thing for, to get digested, and Pat's done a phenomenal job on it.
Yeah, that's great.
The one other concern that I've got that's kind of a category out there is, last meeting we saw our audited financials. There is a line item in there on depreciation expense. And in 2012, depreciation expense was $28,375. It's not in the budget for 2013. And in terms of actual, it's one of those things that I think, is an entry that's made at the end of the year. So I'm not an accountant. I'm not sure how that's supposed to be treated, but that's another potential expense. It's a kind of a paper expense. I mean, it's writing down the value of the assets. But in terms of how, the financials will look at the end of the year, that's something that we should just be mindful of, and perhaps get some better information from the auditors about how that should be treated.
No, it's not, it's an accounting issue,
It's an accounting issue.
and it's a paper issue,
Okay.
for tax purposes, excuse me.
That's okay, I have another one.
Except from you.
I just wanted to report, I was a little stuck on the real estate tax thing too. And it to me, a pretty decent amount of that is to the greenhouse. I don't know, is that right? I just thought, and maybe there's a way to look into, can that become tax exempt?
We talked about that, and that's definitely on our radar, is to talk to the assessor and to see if we can gather that. At this point, we're not using it for, we could say we use it for storage, but we have to see about getting it to a point where it's tax exempt like the other property, and that's definitely something we're looking into. Absolutely.
Okay, any questions now, I think, from the public about anything so far or coming up? Steve?
Can you say anything more about the CPB audit you mentioned and the fact that there's going to be a penalty and, anything you can do that you could tell the public, about the situation?
Well, many people worked on our reply, and that went in with good counseling from the other side as well, kind of behind the scenes. They accepted that. They have till February.
Reply
to the criticisms of that. And those criticisms, I believe, are publicly known, right?
Yeah.
They had
As
to
is
do
our
with
reply.
Yeah, and our reply is available too publicly. The criticisms were about the CPB and failing to meet regulations and notice of meetings. We already, when Adam was writing it up, we already started changing and doing it right. We immediately started announcing the meetings, doing everything with enough days ahead. And when we did have one executive session, we gave plenty of notice. We wrote why it was. So far, so good on that. Any more, Adam?
Well, the reason that in the report they spell all this out, but basically the reason for recommending that we be penalized was that in November of 2011, the CPB had a phone call with the station manager at the time and advised him of the necessity to comply with these particular issues. And then their audit found that in the wake of that phone call, those issues had not been sufficiently addressed. So that's why they're recommending a penalty. In our response letter to their recommendations, we sort of as respectfully as we could requested that they not penalize us because of the fact that the individual and also board members who were making decisions at the time when the recommendations made in that phone call were not observed. Because they're all gone, basically, we asked that the penalty be waived in light of the fact also that we've been extraordinarily cooperative in meeting all of the criteria that weren't previously met.
Now, in each of these situations, of course, are very unique, each penalty situation, but is there any history we can look at to see, have they been real tough on this in the past? Do they fine you? Do they have a history of penalties that we could look at? Maybe it's not public.
I don't think we've ever been.
No, but I mean,
No, but other
the country,
stations.
it's around the country. Are they real? Are the penalties running $20,000 or are they running?
I have an unofficial ballpark
$2,000.
of $2,000.
$2,000,
Yeah,
okay.
But I really,
Okay.
so unofficial, such a ballpark,
No.
I really don't know.
Okay.
Anything else?
I just, I'm sorry, related to that or follow-up, Barbara or Pat have any idea in terms of our budget, how that would be just like we hope for a one-time item? But then how do you prepare or what do you plan with a?
I don't know, I guess, and I don't know how they would do it, whether they would reduce the amount of funding that we get.
Yeah, that basically, the insight that I got was that they're not going to stop giving us money, but if they say, we're going to penalize you $2,000, what they'll probably do is just say, we're going to take it out of your 2014 grant.
So they'll withhold funding?
Right.
Wow. Maybe.
Yeah.
And we'll know that in, what was it, February?
They have 180 days to issue their.
Maybe we can get them to do it over 2 pay periods,
And so did we,
We're working hard, come on, I think
Yeah.
we have a good chance of it being nothing. We've complied so well, Adam has interfaced so well. I think we should believe we're not going, let's not.
Let's worry about real problems.
Yeah, we have other things.
so I know we just got notified today that it became public. Did we also post the link for that on our website so that everybody can see it?
No, we certainly can.
And just put a little notice that says this is the, because it is public and helping people get access to that from the public would be a good idea, so people can see exactly what the complaints were against the station and how we complied and how we answered and the work that we did to answer their concerns.
Right.
Yep. That's easy.
Do that. Good.
Okay.
Are there any other comments about this before we move on to the next item, which is our standing committee report? Steve, yeah.
Just about this online forum that's been created, the Green Forum, that I just got to look at recently. And I guess, it's a little bit new to me. And, it's not easily explained with the station manager's crush of work. So I wonder if you're all familiar with it. We're already familiar with it. I gather that it's ultimately it would replace the listserv, and that this must be a way to, change. Right now, everybody sees everything, whereas with this forum, certain threads will go in a category of their own, and then if people who are interested in it, interested in that thread, can go there and look at it and not have to worry about all the rest. Am I wrong, right, or am I
That's about the right track.
misguided?
No, I think you've just about got the right idea. We'll see how it works. It seemed like a good idea, and we'll put it into practice and see if people actually use it. If people go there and post messages and look up old messages, but that's it. It would make participation would be voluntary instead of mandatory. Where if you're not interested in reading every little facet of every little going on, and you just go and look at the things that you want to, but that allows people also to just get into a conversation as well.
Will there be a place where information that everybody should see will go?
Yes.
And that everybody will see?
We will still have the ability to email everybody, and we'll wield that sword carefully, I guess. But then, so the listserv sort of will still remain. But on this forum, there's a way to post a notification to the top of every single thread, so that it's sort of it's a can't miss item.
Who is on it? who are the names of people? Who?
Basically, right now, everybody is on a listserv.
Which is,
Yeah.
That's a listserv.
Yeah,
We're
I
talking
guess
about-
it's the listserv. Sorry.
you know, maybe
You-
next time, in a month, and you could do an update on how well it's working.
Yep.
Because it's sort of unclear who the volunteers are. Mostly, the listserv has been primarily for on-air people. But it's really bigger than that, right?
Mhm.
Right? I mean, what your intention was that there are people who do a lot of other work who might be glad to know what's happening.
They could be part of that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes,
just so many other contributions from people in the community that can be participating. Okay, unless there's other comments, we move on to the committee reports. How about fundraising, community outreach? Barbara?
Let me start. I don't know if you've got that to put up,
I do.
Adam? Okay. And there's a certain amount of overlap with topics that Adam has already discussed, so I'll just kind of skip through them. I guess the first thing that I'd really like to talk about is the composition of the committee, and whether we need the committee to be appointed by the board in the same way that the program committee and the CAB and so on are. At this point, the committee is, as it seems to be constituted, from interest in folks at this point, it's myself and Tassa and Midge, also Maureen Neville and Ed Zwern, who are volunteers. And if we need to be formally approved by the board, I would ask that the board do so. I think the way that our current bylaws are written, we do. I think that, in terms of the bylaw revisions, it's probably something that we ought to change going forward, and we ought to work more like facilities, ought to, as kind of work groups, along whatever topics people are interested in jumping in to help with. But I'm kind of at a loss as far as whether we are in compliance with how we're supposed to be duly constituted. And, if there are other people who, who want to be appointed, then, is there a number that we should not go beyond, or, is it anyone who's willing to make the commitment to, consistently attend the meetings? We're certainly very anxious to take advantage of, anyone's help and ideas, in the different kinds of activities that this committee has, which are very far-flung. So I'm kind of looking for some guidance here.
Is there a would you be recommending this 5 as your, as make up
As the starting point, yes.
Okay.
Because I think that we need to have that as the bylaws are currently written.
Well, I'll make a motion to appoint Barbara Demarest, Tassa Ferroni Butler, Midge Maroney, Maureen Neville, and Ed Zwern to the fundraising public outreach, community outreach
committee,
community relations committee
For a one-year term.
for a 1-year term.
And, again, if other people step forward as wanting to do that, I'll bring the names to the board.
I second.
I wonder if others who want to participate can just participate. I mean, every time do you,
As non-member
Yeah.
participants.
I mean, that's
Wouldn't
kind of
that
the way
make
that we've
life-
been functioning.
yeah.
But, again, if we need to have a quorum, I kind of need to know who to count.
I there's a vote.
So I think if you've made that motion, did someone second that
I
motion?
second it.
But is there any further discussion on this
I
before
think
we
just on
vote?
the any discussion would be, as Barb suggested, when we reconsider committee structure and the bylaws, maybe we deformalize some of this, because it's very cumbersome.
It is, it is.
Right, so that does mean if we approve this, that you have to give a notice of 7 days of when you're meeting, you have to keep
Right.
records. Okay, we have that motion, and it's been seconded by Steve, or by Martin, and any more discussion? Then, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? And it carries.
Great.
Barbara, what else?
Just in terms of, we talked last month about letters to some of our lapsed donors. We're working through that with some note cards being created. We talked previously about the events that are going on. We've created a draft of a listener survey, and we piloted that at the tabling event at Conneaga Lake. We had a handful of replies, which I've put into a spreadsheet, and I think they were very interesting. As we get more than our current number of 7, we'll distill that up a little bit further and also see what additional tweaking the survey itself needs. But I have the surveys that were filled out with me tonight if anyone is interested in taking a look. We have another tabling event this coming Friday. Tasa will be there with me as well, as will another one of the volunteers who's expressed an interest in the fundraising and community relations committee. That's Laura Clark Curtis. And we also have a date for the Callicoon Farmers Market on the 27th of October. So we'll be looking for some help for that. Ed Zvern is taking on the task of writing press releases and handling some of that kind of publicity. He got some good placements for yard stock, and I think he'll be willing to go forward. Adam's already spoken to underwriting. And he's also mentioned some of the new promotional materials, the bumper sticker, which everybody has in the envelopes, and using that logo going forward for other things like mugs and teas and so on.
Where's the tabling on Friday?
It's at Liberty.
In where?
At the farmers market.
Oh, okay, thanks.
So please stop by if you're.
I thought the Liberty's Farmers Market is on Friday.
It is on
Yes,
Friday.
that's what they said, Friday.
Yeah.
And this is still down at the Visitors
Visitors
Association parking lot.
Up by Ferndale.
Yeah.
I don't know yet where it is, but I'll figure
Yeah.
that out on Friday.
Anything else?
Not for me.
You were talking about the lapsed members. Will that policy be up and running for this next pledge drive so that we can immediately, before the holiday, get back to the people who haven't been contributing, who once did, so that we could integrate that? Okay. Thank you very much. No more questions about that. Next one would be facilities.
Okay.
Martin?
We already talked about some of the stuff here, and I apologize for handing out paper, but this is paper that I rescued from the trash.
Oh, good.
And so the only real expense is the ink. Okay. The Facilities Committee did not officially meet this month. There were, however, some developments. As regards the handicap access ramp, Don Downs found that the metal ramp would be very expensive. This leaves wood as the only practical option. A design and installation brochure from Lowe's was circulated. I made a rough sketch and a partial material list. Both were sent around for people's opinions. Okay, as regards the transmitter, but I think I'll just skip that because we talked that over pretty well. And as regards the greenhouse, now this is kind of a little personal experience that I had here. And I was on a recent visit to the greenhouse. I was standing in the basement looking out the double windows. Have you ever been, most of you been there? Mm-hmm. In the basement there's those double windows, okay? So I look out there and I see some large orange balls. And I say, whoa, those are the floats that are on Lake Jeff that prevent boaters from going over the spillway. So it's a great view of the lake and dam that provides our hydropower. So I thought this is the perfect place to have a new studio. And what a view to have while sitting at the master control there, looking out and seeing the lake and the dam and everything. Okay, so I looked around with new eyes. The basement, the room is large, the floor is concrete, the ceiling is high, all this is good. We could insulate the whole basement, replace the 2 sliding windows with a large picture window, replace the door, wall in the heating unit to muffle sound, and convert the laundry area to a small bathroom. A small parking lot, as proposed earlier in drawings by Don Downs, could be made next to the building that would be on the same level as the basement door. The office and existing studio would remain the same. This plan would avoid the long disruptions that would be caused by trying to do construction on a busy studio that is on the air 24 hours a day. So it would save the mess of trying to redo our current studio while we're using it. Okay, designing a new studio from scratch would be much more efficient and cost effective. We would still have the existing studio that could be run from the office and used as a production studio. The new studio could be built to include handicap accessible features such as stairless access, wide doors, hallways, and bathroom. This would seem to negate the need to modify our current studio. By the way, the ramp is only the first step in making our current studio truly handicap accessible. One problem could be with restrictions on the deed. This plan would take a considerable commitment of time, money, and energy. We all need to get over to the greenhouse and take a good hard look to see if this plan seems possible and if this is the path of development we want to follow. So that's just an idea. Of course, it would be hooked up to Jeff Hydro, and there'd be a link to the existing studio. But to me, looking out that window, I said, man, you see the dam and the lake. And then, so that was the start of it. But I think that building could be a very functional studio down there. You could have, it's concrete, it's got cinder block walls, it could be easy to soundproof it. You could have the handicap access there would be fairly easy to do. And, but it would be a big step, and it would be something that we really need to, everybody needs to really think about it and decide if this is what a direction we want to go, or to me, I'm just looking at fixing up the current studio that we have. If we make the ramp, we still have the problem of the doors are not really wide enough to meet handicap access rules. The bathrooms would be very hard to get into, and to try to get somebody in there and over at the master control on a wheelchair, that would be frankly pretty hard to do. And you may have to open the door between the studio, and so in order to make our current studio to be handicap accessible, there may be a lot of renovations we have to do. If we can start over from scratch and have one studio at Jeffersonville handicap accessible, then there's no reason to do the second studio. And the second studio, the current studio could be a backup studio. It could be, as I said, a place where the office can just run the station from there if need be. And the other little minor advantage would be that it would be a large area for musicians to come and perform there, or groups of people could be there possibly. And there's a little flat area right next to the studio that Don Downs actually drew in parking spots that could be made there. And if you made the parking lot there, it would be the same level as the basement walk-in, so there would be complete handicap accessibility. You wouldn't have the problem of going up and down, and it would just be much easier to make the doors, while you're building the place, to make the doors wide enough and put the right handles on them so it would be accessible. So I think there's a lot of advantages to it, but it'd be a big commitment from not just the facilities people, but the whole. I have no idea how much it would cost, and maybe we should not spend the money on the access ramp at the current place until we figure out something.
I think there's some other issues that we have to address before
Okay.
that.
Mhm.
I like that idea though, because I
Mhm.
like the greenhouse too, and I thought it was worth it, but there's some property line issues
Yeah.
that we have to look at because there's different owners and they intersect.
And I hear
And
there's deed restrictions too.
There's the restriction on the house for only used for residential purposes, and that would be the first thing that we need to see if we can get that reduced and removed. And then the second thing would be the property lines, because from my understanding, where the Blue Monster generator is right now, sitting behind the big green monster, whatever it is, sitting behind the station, that's not our property. So that is sitting on property that's owned by Ann and Malcolm.
Right.
And so we need to have a really good map done of the 3 properties that we talk about, the Jeff Hydro property, the greenhouse property, and Ann and Malcolm's property, so we can see the property lines and understand where they intersect and see if we can make arrangements or transactions with adjoining property owners, because there's no sense in us continuing to improve property that we don't own, building parking lots on property that we don't own or control. So, I mean, I think that the first thing that we need to do is see if we can take care of the deed restriction, and if we can get rid of the deed restriction, then see if we can make some property boundary agreements with the neighboring people to do transactions with those boundaries.
The parking area Martin's talking about is actually on the greenhouse
Is it on the greenhouse
property.
But
Access
access
off
is through,
52?
it's through that,
I'm gonna show it to you.
okay.
This is a little map that also, thanks to Mr. Downs, that's a surveyor's plot of the property, and I think, I'm not positive, that it represents one house, one area here, that's the greenhouse. This trapezoid here is Malcolm's property, and I think this is the
Jeff Hydro?
Jeff Hydro
Okay.
property. And if you notice here that it shows a series of 7, that may be optimistic, parking spaces right off of that road right there.
Okay.
So just
So
take a
maybe
look
we
at that,
can,
pass that around.
Scan this picture in so that we can all have it, because I did understand there was
Yeah.
a easement along one
Did we put this
side.
on the, I gave Adam a copy of that.
Okay.
And maybe if you, maybe it's better to have
Okay,
a hard copy, but I don't know if it's on
okay.
our website or anything.
Well, this would be really helpful, so that we could all have a good idea, because I think there's I see the water drainage, because I also think there's a sewer line with some pumping stations that go from the
Right.
station up to the greenhouse that
Well,
are
and
gonna
it goes up
connect
to it goes up to
to the sewer line on 52?
the county, the town.
The county road,
But
yeah.
we have to pump our
Right, sewage
waste
up,
product up
right.
the uphill.
Right. So, I mean, there is, issues, but I do like that design, and I think it's worth us doing. So, I guess the first thing would be to see about the deed restrictions, and I'd like to see if I could tackle it.
Yeah.
There's a couple of lawyers, I think, that have some experience on it, and see what we can do. See if we can get some pro bono work from some of our local lawyers on that.
Do we even know where the deed's at, or is it?
Yeah, it's in Monticello. We just go and pick it up out of Monticello, so
Yeah.
easy enough to do.
Well, and in the meantime, as many of us could be possible, just go look at the place and walk around there and see if it really seems feasible. I'll be glad to meet anybody there,
Right.
virtually at any time to do that.
I just have some questions how we might, project cost, because
Yeah.
if I understood you earlier, Pat, a couple of meetings ago, it seemed that the Honesdale studio was very much underestimated in terms of cost, or maybe ongoing costs.
But, the
So-
Honesdale studio is so different, because basically the costs, from what I could determine with the Honesdale studio, were equipment. The building was, basically we have a room, and we put a petition between the actual broadcast area and a front little anteroom, but I don't think much else was done. Mike, we looked at that,
Yeah.
it wasn't, I mean,
Well, it depends on what contractor built that, but the vast majority of that expense was, you asked me,
Yeah.
how did this cost us
How does
this?
it
And I
cost
said,
so
okay,
much?
well, a console is $8,000 to $12,000, a microphone is so much.
Right.
And that's where the money went.
Right.
And I was a little surprised that we had, I think that the term that Adam used was, it's a Maserati. It's a very, very nice
high-tech
facility.
studio.
It's gorgeous. But I was a little surprised that on sort of speculation, we put that much money into it.
right.
If I remember correctly, when Winston presented this at the board, because I was a board member then, he said it would cost $25,000. The board did not examine the whole endeavor at all, because we had been offered other studio space in Pennsylvania and in Narrowsburg for nothing. And we didn't realize that there is another big station in Honesdale that has, just as Albany does. They have, they're in Waymart, they're in Scranton, you know.
Repeater.
Other,
Repeater.
and so that, and also we invested a lot of money ongoing. I didn't think the board was aware that we would be charged rent every month.
I'm sort of got lost here, but I'm wondering where all this is going, conversation-wise.
I think it's what would the cost be if you were to use Honesdale as the model for what would the cost be to
I don't think we can
redo?
use Honesdale as a model.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think you
You
can.
should definitely have a very
Well,
accurate
I-
cost accounting
Yeah.
of this.
I mean, maybe
No, I meant
didn't-
in terms of facilities,
Right.
not in terms of
Yeah.
financing.
I think the only thing I was saying is, how do we get some kind of cost estimate? Because, and I didn't mean to necessarily say Honesdale was a model, but my understanding, and perhaps it's wrong, was that the facts regarding Honesdale were not transparent or clear or estimated. So I just want, more information forthcoming. And if we can get pro bono stuff, fine, but I don't want to be in a situation where we're like throwing darts in the dark. And I'm not suggesting anybody is doing that, but I mean, it
This
sounds
was just
good.
an idea.
No, I think
And
it
I think
sounds.
that we have, before we
Yeah.
made any kind of decision, we
Yeah.
for sure
No,
want
I
to
think it's a
have
good
it
idea,
all
and I think it's well
penciled
written.
out.
I'm just,
Yeah.
I guess I just want more information.
Well, I told, well,
Yeah.
I'm thrilled you want more information rather than not.
An additional point we would need to talk about in the future, and I don't think we should get pulled into it tonight, and it would be, do we want to have our main studio in a separate building from our main offices? I think there's a lot of issues raised with that, just in terms of practicality and inclement weather and traipsing back and forth in the winter, and it's probably a discussion to have at some point.
Okay, but we have we are, thanks to Pat, willing to look into the deed restriction.
Yeah.
Pat and I were also assigned the task of beginning the discussions with Malcolm and Ann and the Grass,
Right.
and we have started that.
Right.
We've had one conversation. At the end of the month, Malcolm and Ann will have sold their property in Massachusetts and will be having this as their primary residence, so they'll be around and we'll be able to do that. The conversation, just the initial ones, have been very positive. I mean, there's a willingness to talk about this,
Yes.
and a good feeling on both sides. So I'm confident that we can move ahead and
Yeah.
find out about the building.
Agreed.
Just to, on all of the reports, do we need to make a motion to accept the reports? Okay, because I would like the reports to be immediately sent out on that forum. We don't need to wait a month till we approve our minutes to have this very timely information. It should go out right away, okay? And I guess the forum would be the place, is that where you put these things? And they're also printed and put on the bulletin board and the stairwell, or what? Are they
Well,
put
if
on
they're
the web?
attached to the minutes, then they would be printed and put on the stairwell when the minutes are approved, I think. But
No, I'm
That's how I
saying
would
we
see it
want,
happening.
it's too long for people to wait a month to know what we're talking about now. I mean, these kind of things. These are not our minutes. These are the Independence
so
Day
maybe
minutes.
we'll make a section of the stairwell for committee reports.
Don't
Yes,
they get
but-
to see this first? Don't they get to see the video first? And if something they see on this interests them, they could request copies of these things too?
Who's gonna sit?
Well,
I don't know. We do. I have no idea.
Who's going to sit there for 3 hours?
Watch this meeting. People who are having trouble falling asleep.
So Adams, we'll try and put it on the forum
He's
list
trying to
and
make
see
it
how it goes.
interesting,
for the next-
During this video, you will not be able to fast forward. Fast forward will be disabled on your.
People
Especially that
DVR.
financial report.
Yeah.
The program committee, they are not here, but we did get a report from them. Does someone want to read it? I mean, I
I'm
have it.
happy to,
Yeah,
unless someone else is already planning to.
Read it, please.
I don't have it in.
Oh, here it is.
Program committee now has 5 members: Julia Greenberg, Sybil Fisher, Jason Dole, Valerie Mancy, and Mary Hall, and 1 interim member, Brenton Baker. We hope to enlarge the committee with non-program hosts and more diverse members representing different ethnicities, geographies, etc. by the end of the year. The last meeting, we voted to appoint Mary Hall as secretary. In the meantime, we have identified our major tasks as 1, suggesting revised functions and responsibilities of the PC. This conversation began last meeting, September 10th meeting, and by next meeting we'll have suggested changes in the bylaws and a draft of suggested responsibilities and functions. I would just clarify that to say that we're going to forward just suggested text to Midge and the working group on bylaws revisions about the description of the PC for our consideration. 2, revising and rethinking how we evaluate shows. Jason Dole is taking the lead on suggesting an approach to the committee that is peer-driven and more reliant on staff capacity. 3, attracting new quality local programming to WJFF. How much of this is the role of the PC? Who else do we have to work with? 4, significantly strengthening local and political affairs coverage. 5, establishing a solid and continuous working relationship with the Community Advisory Committee. Let's scroll down here. I'm a little lost, Sonia. Your computer. Okay. While doing this, we're still responding to comments from the community, reviewing listener surveys recently undertaken by the interim station manager with support from volunteer Jim Huntington, and considering new proposals. Finally, a couple of months ago, the PC voted to reinstate FSRN, Free Speech Radio News, into our schedule, as we felt we were missing this important alternative source of international news, and because we heard from many people across the community that they missed hearing it on WJFF. We've since been working with Adam to reshuffle the schedule to fit it back in, which is a bit of a trick since it requires finding 5 half-hour shows to fill out the hour for the week. Recently, however, we learned that FSRN may have to cease broadcast because of funding shortages. Given this news, we thought that we should wait to make a major change in the schedule until we had some sense of whether FSRN is going to survive. We'll keep the board informed about what we learn and the implications for the schedule. That is it.
And you were at the meeting,
Yeah. And
does anybody have any questions of him about?
I would like to know if Kurt, as board liaison with the PC?
Yeah, I've been attending their meetings since July. I think they're really great. I mean, without adding a lot of detail, I would just say that even over 3 months, it seems like it's on an arc to becoming a really healthy, functioning entity. It's got good folks. They're looking for 2 more. I think the idea is to have seven members. It's 5 now plus Brenton. I'm going to miss Brenton a lot when his 4-month temporary ends, and he's hinted he might want to help us out in some capacity, which might be another sort of midterm extension on that. And if the PC requested that, I would think we should approve that. And it gets at least to maybe January of the new year when they've got a full seven-member board. Trying to think anything else. They're kind of stymied on the whole program review process, and Adam, who was there, a lot of stuff got thrown out, including maybe holding a forum at some point hosted by the program committee that would invite all on-air hosts to come and put their 2 cents in on how they think program reviews, what's a process that might work well, and really make it collaborative to come up with a good system going forward with that, so people don't feel like they're being penalized or have to go in front of the principal or whatever. It seems like it had kind of degenerated in recent years, and we definitely want to make it a positive experience for program hosts. I would just mention briefly too that the programming study group that Mike and Joel and myself had initiated, we want to present maybe in October or November. One thing that's come up in that group and also at the PC is still just trying to understand a little better what the framework for their decision making is. Do they just go back to the mission statement, or is it appropriate in any way for us as the board to provide them with something derived from the mission statement that would be, say, a program goals that are very broad? It's not giving them specific criteria to make their decisions, but a broad statement of what the station's programming mission is that would guide them in specific decisions going forward. And I really like the idea, but I think that's maybe a discussion for this board to have at a future meeting.
So are you saying that work group will present a draft that we could begin our discussion with?
I think we would want to present kind of all the discussions we've had on programming committee versus program director models and whatnot. I think we should schedule it for November rather than October. And one question is it premature for us to think of this idea of the board drafting some very broad programming goals that would help guide the programming committee in their decision making? That committee seems to desire that.
Okay, so we'll put that on for November. The next committee is the CAB. Daryl?
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming.
The CAB did meet last month on the 25th, and although there were only 2 of us out of 4 that showed up, we elected to have the meeting anyway, even though it didn't technically count. There were 8 people that showed up in total, and we just sort of opened up the discussion about how to move forward with making a decision about bringing new members in, and it sort of culminated in a decision that we would just accept people who were willing to serve on the board and show up. And although we weren't able to take a vote at that time, the next couple of weeks we did an online vote with all the members voting, and they all voted that they agreed that that was a good way to go. So we have 12 new members to announce on the Community Advisory Board, which is great. There were a couple that dropped out, because I was on the phone in the last couple of weeks calling everybody and just making sure that they were really serious about serving and that they could show up to meetings and they understood that we have to have quorums each time, so it's very important that they showed up, and most of them agreed. There were a couple that dropped out, but 12 new members. I've got a list here, but I neglected to make multiple copies.
Why don't you just read them off?
Okay, sure.
And then put it on the website.
Sorry?
And then on the website later.
Okay, sure. So the new members being Claire Coleman, Sheila Dugan.
Oh, could you tell us where they live? Do you know?
I know some of them. I can tell you where some of them. Sheila Dugan is in Milanville. I'm not sure where Claire lives.
Okay. Livingston Manor.
Okay, Livingston Manor. Matt Fumas. Frumis, yeah, he's in Dutchess County, I guess. That's what I have.
White Lake.
Oh, he's in White Lake?
Liberty.
Liberty, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Modu Juf, he lives in White Lake. Sandra Oxford, she lives in Monticello. Oh, thanks. Kalika Stern, she lives in South Fallsburg. Beverly Sterner lives in Beach Lake, PA. Marilyn Vallant in Hurleyville, New York. Jeannie Wertheimer in North Branch. Vincent Alcunis in Callicoon. Carol Ryan in Liberty. And Larry Roden in Liberty.
What was the name before Larry?
Carol Ryan.
It might be Larry Ravden.
And Larry, what was Larry's last name?
I have it as R-A-U-D-I-N Roden.
I think it's Ravden.
Oh, okay. My apologies. I'm very sorry.
And what was Vincent's last name?
It's A-L-U-K-U-N-I-S. Alcunis.
Okay. So are you are asking their approval to serve as members?
I am indeed.
Great. Second?
Out of these people, I've been on the phone with all but a couple of them, and so there are just a couple that I still haven't communicated with about the meeting. We have a meeting scheduled in September, and I want to try to get everybody there, but that's tough to do. But in between now and then, I'll make sure I communicate with the people that I've been calling, and they haven't called me back. So.
Okay.
But yes, I'd like to submit these as new members of the Community Advisory Board.
Wait, can we do discussion before we take a vote?
Yes, I just need a second.
Okay.
Somebody second that? Okay. And discussion of the members.
I guess the modest concern I have, I think it's awesome, and I think it's really cool that you've got a good list there, but at least 5 of those people have been on the CAB for 9 or 10 years, and I just kind of thought we were trying to do a little more of a fresh start, and I guess it just raises some mild concern for me. And I don't know if anyone else has an opinion on that. I wouldn't vote no if I'm the only one that's thinking that, but.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, since I was out of the loop as just a weekender for the last 25 years, I don't know a lot of them. But I will say the chief objection I've always had to the concept of term limits, which might be implied here, would be that there's perhaps a cynical idea that people who are doing something on and on and on and on and on may become remiss or careless in their goals. But I've always felt, at least I'm using the government metaphor, if you'd allow that, I like the idea of having someone experienced. I like the idea of someone being dedicated. There can be burnout, of course. There can be some insulated kinds of lack of productivity, perhaps, but on the face value of them having served before, I would be fine trusting, the judgment of the majority here, because I have no objection to somebody being ongoing and ongoing if we think that it sounds good. So, I mean, I don't, that in itself wouldn't hold me to vote against it.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe we could suggest to Daryl and the committee that they do what we did here. So we were 11, 12 people all new being appointed at the same time. And we put numbers in a bowl and said some people will be there for 2 years, some people would be there for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And I know some of these people as being valuable people in our community, and many of them I don't know. But I'm happy that many people stepped up to be on the CAB, and I would hate to say that we should then start to nitpick through them. But why don't we put numbers in a fishbowl and let them govern themselves with some terms?
I think it's typically a 1-year term for.
Is it a
for
1-year
everyone.
term? Oh, I thought maybe they ruled for 2 or 3 years. All one?
We could.
I don't think it says whether or not, whether there's a limit to terms.
Members serve for 1 year and may be reappointed.
So, but no limit to that.
But there's nothing to stop us from reappointing the same people year after year.
Right.
Now, first of all, of the new people that are being appointed, none of them have served in the last 2 years. That's for sure, right? So we've set the rules for ourselves is that if we, when our term is ended and we take a year break, then we're eligible to go back on the board, right? That's the rules for us.
That's
So
the way the bylaws are now, but
Right.
everything's going to be explored and discussed here.
yeah, but I don't think any of these people, if they haven't been on there the last 2 years, they've had a break and they still want to come back and have more of it.
That's good.
I'd say.
I agree. I agree with that.
They're banking on it being different. You better
I
believe.
agree.
Yes.
Yeah, I like the idea of experience, and I agree with Midge, but I also think that it's really easy to get entrenched and stale, and that's why I like the suggestion that the CAB look to have some kind of rotation, so that you do get, there are lots of people in the community who would be of value, and I think that if there's a way to encourage that, I think also the more you spread that responsibility around throughout the community, the better it is for the station. The more exposure you get, the more involvement you get.
Great, and I think the community sees a functioning community action board, then you'll have people that come forth to say, I'd like to be on that group, because it does something, it's important.
And I agree, there's a lot of people from Liberty. But we've just went through how many years of not having a quorum? Dale has to get a quorum.
And they have to have
if they're
a
willing
meeting
to
now,
come.
this month. In the month of October, we have to have a legal CAB meeting.
I kind of like that there's a lot of people from Liberty, because I think we've been thinking that maybe there was too many from the
That's where
western end of the
transfer is,
county.
right?
Yeah. And
There was
maybe
nobody from
getting
Liberty
it,
before.
migrating it to the east is not such a bad idea.
Barbara.
And it looks like you've got a nice.
I only counted 3
ethnic
numbers, though, from
Ethnic
Liberty.
mix in here too, which I think is good. Also,
diverse, yeah.
it is a diverse group. I mean, at least with some of the names that I recognize, and that's important. So that's a great thing.
Barbara.
Is 12 the number that we would want to set the CAB at, or if
Actually,
another group,
17.
if another group of people come, in October and, volunteer to get involved, would we then look to add them? Is there an upper number?
If I might follow your model, we're approving these for 1 year. That means through August of next year. And if others that come, they're very willing to participate, but they don't count in the quorum numbers.
But this is in addition to you, Darrell, and in addition to 3 others. So there's 16 altogether. Okay.
And 17 is what it's.
I'm sorry, it's 16, I just miscounted, I was thinking there are 5, not 4
okay.
currently. The bylaws do specify, though, that the year term is to begin, if I'm right, it's like the meeting after the annual meeting, which is the June meeting?
The annual, yes,
The annual meeting's in June.
June,
so-
So in July, normally a year appointment, so I would think this appointment would be through
June.
Well, but
right,
just
until the next.
Just to let you know, and I think it's germane to what Lori and I had been talking about in terms of the board taking its seat, and this might be something that we have to think about too for everybody, CAB, other committees, is that they take office the same day, not a month later, the same day of the appointment, so that everybody goes in to June 20th or whatever that date is. You don't wait a month, because if you wait a month, then you have, you have a lame duck situation, and you may, so it would be, but we can talk about that, but just instead of it being a month delay, it would make sense, and I think that Lori and I want to make a suggestion there, that everybody comes on the same time. Instead of like, if I understood you to
Yes,
say.
I
No, I think
that
that only
your
applied
point-
to the board, where it's the election appointment of board members happened in June, but it says that they begin their term the following month. That's
Right.
specified in the bylaws. That's not specified in the case of the CAB.
Okay.
I think they can begin immediately.
Okay, so is the motion,
does happen
Darrell,
in
that you're
July.
making that, you're asking us to approve these names that you have given?
Yes.
That's, we've got so far, and we had, Mike, we have a second. And, I don't know, Kurt, can you live with?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm.
I mean, we are in a
thanks for
hard
having
place.
the
We
discussion.
really have to have
Could I
this
just
committee
make one-
meeting in October. It would.
Could I
it's-
just make one more
Yeah.
comment? Okay, first of all, Darrell, I think that if the first 2 meetings, you're probably going to have pretty good attendance since you've already talked to these people, right? But maybe what your committee should do is figure out a quick way, if people don't show up for 2 meetings in a row without a legitimate excuse, that you're automatically suspended. And then,
That's actually something that came up at the last meeting, and we just kind of tabled it because we need to have a full board in order to actually discuss it officially. So next month, actually next week, on Tuesday, we're meeting, and that's going to be one of the things that will be brought up. We'll be electing officers, that sort of thing, trying to like stabilize ourselves a little bit.
Are we allowed to attend the CAB meetings?
Yeah.
Public meetings.
It's a public meeting. I mean, us as
but they run the meeting, you're not.
we're not allowed
yeah,
to. We have nothing
If
to
they
say.
invite you to
There's a
speak.
public comment, you can.
We can say something.
Would you use some money to buy food?
Some money?
At this meeting, there should be refreshments. We really have to tell them we're so happy they're there.
There's a few of these left.
Yeah, right. Okay, yeah, I guess.
I'm Dee Dee Down for any of you that don't know me. I've been with the station sort of off and on since 1996. When I inquired about the Community Advisory Board under Betty Popovic, she said it wasn't utilized. And could I do something for her? So I went out to some senior citizens meetings to see what the response was. Do you like WJFF? What would you like to change? Do you want to come and get involved? Okay? But it has always been underutilized, and it can always be used as community outreach. And I'm hoping that now there is a community advisory board that it will be used, because I think that's needed. Community outreach, get the word out, let people know you're there, and maybe get more volunteers. But it's always not been used. And I'm just hoping that the new one will be used by the board and by the community.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, and something that Kurt, to your point, some of the people that are repeating their terms have been bringing up in the last couple of meetings about really wanting to get out and reach out. That's their main thing. I haven't felt anything weird about them coming back. Like since there's no Winston around, I guess there's no more hard feelings, so they just really want to get attached to the station again and do some more for it. Yeah, the trouble.
Troubles, yes. What is your age group? Because I know some of the names on there, but it seems like everybody's in there.
Modu is young.
Modu's young. He's in college,
Okay.
so we have pretty young, probably his early 20s. Up, 60, 70, I guess. I don't know. It's pretty diverse in that way.
Who's the person from Beach Lake?
Beach Lake is
Is that
Beverly Sterner.
Not exactly Beach Lake, but she's close to there.
Okay, can we,
Let's vote.
Paul, have a question? Any more discussion? All in favor of Daryl's motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes, okay.
I'd like to abstain.
Yeah. Okay. Correspondence? Thank you very much. Thank you. This is something, we're so happy that we're making progress on.
What is that, Steve?
On Tuesday at 6:30 at the Jefferson Building.
Correspondence? Old business, anything on the hazard application, Pat?
Wow. Well,
We're getting
I got
money.
nothing on that, by the way.
and I did, so I don't know what to tell you all. I've gotten 2 emails alerting me to meetings regarding the instructions to apply for the application for this grant. And yet, we did not receive something that said we were invited to apply. I was told we would get a letter that said you're invited to apply. We took your letter of intent and you're invited. But I am getting information about webinars and training to fill out the application. So I don't have anything to tell you other than I have to do some research to see if maybe our letter got lost in the woods or something and we're actually in the queue to apply. So I found out that I can take the instructions for the application on a webinar, which is great for me. And they're due October 30th, so I have some time to do that. But I need to make sure that we were invited to apply. We didn't get any letter that said we're not.
Right.
So I don't know. So I'm kind of perplexed by this, but I am getting emails from them giving me information on taking the training to be able to fill out the application. So I'm taking that positively, as I am a glass is 3/4 full lady.
Okay, the study of community radio staffing models elsewhere. Anything to report on that?
We've talked to a number of stations. I think maybe we could make a full report on that next month. But I think that what we've seen so far, and Kevin, jump in here, every station does things differently, and they tend to, group assignments around what the skills or the interest of, their given individuals are. So, there may be a combination of things that people are doing because they like it or they're good at it, or a combination of both. The thing that I think, though, is, very much the case is that every place seems to have a whole lot more staff than we do. And, I think that we just really need to look in terms of,
Even with the state's
Well, I think also the programming director and music directors and things of this nature are part-time staff. They have also part-time, actually, I think that the first month or something is paid for underwriting, and then that's strictly commission only. And the one person I talked to, I think it was at KMUD, that person is there 5-6 days a week at the station, which is, everybody else is usually the program director and things like that are 3 days. And some of the people I did talk to said they want to increase that from, to a full-time position. But currently, and some people had setbacks where they had a full-time program director, news director, and they had to cut back on that from, 4 or 5 days a week to 2 or 3 days a week or something of that nature.
It's
but
all,
a lot of them, a lot
it's
of them
all
had,
just very, very variable.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're affiliated, with a university, so therefore some of the functions get handled by the university, accounting-ish kind of things, and there's just a whole lot of variety. And we'll be happy to tell you what we found, but how much of a conclusion we can draw from it that this is the best model, it may be difficult to derive that lesson. But it's interesting talking to folks.
I think that one of the more interesting people I spoke with was the station manager at KMUD, and she talked about having, prior to her being, like a standard, station manager, program director, music director, blah, 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 they had 3 managers at one time, and each had a specific area that they dealt with: operations, programming, and fundraising and things of that nature, that financial end. And they were just separate but equal. So it was like, she called it a group management style. I never heard of that before, but I thought it was interesting. And when I asked her, I said, so what happened? And she said, we just got too big. So I don't,
The station got too big?
yeah, for that kind of operation, I guess.
The thing which can
But-
sometimes also be hard to find is, who are stations of a comparable size? And I've talked to Valerie from the program committee, and I think she was also trying to determine that. I'm not sure if, using our station login to the, the NFCB, whether that would be anything that we can find. But, a lot of those initial stations that you gave us the lead on have double our budget. So it really doesn't make any sense to spend a lot of time figuring out how they're staffed.
Right, so, and those that are connected with universities, they may have, like, they
Sky's the
have
limit.
Yeah.
a lot of money that's not
Yeah.
being,
Right.
yeah.
Okay,
So, anyway.
moving on to Midge on the bylaws.
Okay, I'm going to ask a favor first, which is to, next agenda, move the bylaws up a little higher, because it's like about 9 o'clock, and I know we're tired. I will say, this report is incomplete because it's ongoing. So, in case anyone had any question as to why we're doing it, we need a major revision for both clarity and accuracy. And what I did was, I sent you, I believe, I forwarded Lori's notes and summary. She sent them to me, so everybody should have those. So if you would take a look at them, I think what we're probably going to do also to speed things along and to help with the clarity and the questions and so forth, is we will send you out, when we are ready, a draft of the bylaws. And by the way, we would still like someone else to join us. So besides me and Lori, and I know it's a glamour job. I know it really is. So I'm still looking for somebody, even if you want to just come in on an occasional participation, we would love your help. I would also like to ask the favor of the committee people in sending your reports. Please send us a copy. I know they're out there, but just mark it attention bylaws, because we want to look at your reports as to how they specifically relate to the bylaws. So we want everybody's input that way too. So, but to go over, everybody I think has a copy of the 2009 bylaws, and we are still in the process of trying to find the original ones. We're not sure yet where they may be, buried in Grant's tomb, but yes, Barbara, you found,
Yes.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I didn't put them together yet.
okay.
They were in Grant's
Excellent.
tomb.
They were in Grant's tomb.
They were in Grant's tomb.
It's always the
So-
last place you look.
That's
All right.
Upstairs at
And
the
upstairs
studio.
in the tomb. But to give you a couple of things, the summary, I sent Lori's letter to just highlight a few things, because it is available for you. And if there's a question of transparency, is this available to everybody else? If it's on our, I mean, because we can get the letter out there if that's the question. But it's in progress work right now. So there are some technical mistakes in the bylaws, some important mistakes that one of our volunteers as well as Lori called forward. So the specific mistakes we have to address are mistakes with regard to CPB compliance. These current bylaws are out of compliance in a couple of places, and Lori and other volunteers we will get it straightened out.
Any place in particular you want me to, do you want to highlight anything here, or?
Is that the,
This is the current bylaws.
well, no, what I wanted to do is, Lori's summary is
Got
what
it.
were my talking points.
Okay, no, I never got that.
I thought I sent, did anybody get it?
I got
it. Yeah.
Because I thought I sent it to board. Wouldn't you be on the same thing with?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, that I have
Okay.
to do you.
Yeah,
Okay.
if anybody ever wants anything put up on the screen, just make sure you send it to me.
Okay, cool, all right.
Guardian of the screen.
So, just to give you an overview, and I will send this to you, Adam.
Yeah.
In fact, if I had internet, I could do it now, but I
I know,
can't.
yeah.
These bylaws need to be revised because of clarity and accuracy. And Lori had also sent another sample bylaws. So it's the one that's Roman numeral 3 Inc. is the one that we're using as our guidelines, because these were specifically set for nonprofit organizations, and that's important. So as we go through the bylaws, and we're about a third of the way through, and I think it'll go a lot more quickly now, that we had to, first of all, specifics that we don't need to have the mission statement in the bylaws, but we do need to revisit and revise the mission statement. But that's a separate matter. Also, we have our incorporation document, and we don't have to use the same thing in the incorporation documents as we're doing in the bylaws. There's an interesting, if you look especially at item 1 that Lori had mentioned in our notes, and I'm sorry I don't have this up there, is that we have to be careful about the way members is used, because members was used in a very different way in these bylaws, and I don't know why a lot of this happened, but members, in the sense of contributors, do not have a role in governance and do not vote. So we have to be clear in the bylaws, because it was almost implied in the old bylaws that anybody could vote. And this is separate from the volunteers, who by virtue of their volunteer work do have a voice and a vote in selecting a member. So I'm going to encourage you to look at the memo, the summary memo that she sent out, and I can resend it. So Article 2 in the bylaws, we're deleting that because it's the name, Section A through C. We don't need to repeat it. Because the legal name is in the certificate of incorporation. The mission statement functions as a separate document. The purposes of the purposes are in the certificate of incorporation. We don't need to go back and restate purposes in there. So that's why we're deleting some cases, because it's duplicate and it's inappropriate. And let's see. We're reworking Article 3 on the Board of Trustees because we want clarity and compliance again, especially with regard to CPB. And so if we need to add some sections about the staggered terms, we want to do that. We also, Lori wants to make sure that everybody, when the term begins that night. I think I addressed that. And we also were on the same page about there was a requirement that trustees make an annual contribution, and we're deleting that, and you'll be voting on that, but just to let you know, we want to delete that phrase that that trustees have to make a contribution. We think we make enough contribution just being here, but anyway, we're not sure where that was
Of course,
put
it
in.
doesn't say monetary amount, so, you know.
Well, that's true, so it could be $1, but we didn't like the sound of it. We didn't like the sound of it. So, but again, you're going to be reading through this, and you're going to be agreeing or disagreeing or voting or not. I mean, accepting it. So the current bylaws provides that in case of vacancy, and this was another issue, a new trustee will be selected to fill a vacancy. So this is important relative to the matters that at hand, the troubles, yes, thank you, Pat. Because it's not consistent with New York state law. So these bylaws not only were not conforming with CPB, they were violating New York state law. So we have to change some things like that. So a trustee will serve until the next annual meeting, which will be then next term of election. So Article 3, volunteer elections. Now, we have a way that we're going to suggest, and I guess instead of just going into that now, we have a simple way of making sure that there's nobody going to suspect that there's anything bogus about our volunteer election. What we're going to do is just a simple election ballot that some unions use, and it comes back anonymously. You just send out the information. The people can have a little statement. The volunteers can have a statement about who they are, what they want to do, what their vision is. All right, that can go in the envelope with a return envelope that is sealed. And the outside envelope is then signed with the person's name on it. So it's very simple, and that way there can be somebody there to make sure this person, yes, eligible to vote, yes, and so there shouldn't be any questions about the legitimacy of the election.
I think the concerns, raised by Graham were about eligibility, what qualified as a volunteer, and that probably needs to be clarified.
And we have to look at that to bring that up to the eligibility too. And in fact, we came up with the idea that again, to have it, we don't want any funny appearances. So we thought, well, we'll ask somebody in the community to just sit there as an observer, and it could be anybody that would volunteer. That's maybe they listen to JFF and maybe they're a member in that broad sense of giving money. But we want someone just to be the witness there. To witness there that just like exactly
Opening up the written ballots at the end, the right end.
So again, we just want it to look appropriate and be proper. That's all.
Now, the definition of volunteers, does that mean people on the CAB or volunteers?
Well, you see, that's the thing we're going to have to come up, and it's going to have to be...
Are they on-air volunteers?
We're going to have to come up with the definition. And by the way, I wasn't going to mention this now, but I think I'll mention it anyway, because this is a side issue, if I can digress for a moment. The woman who is the director or assistant director of the Sullivan County RSVP, which is the retired
senior volunteer.
She has offered to give a seminar to us, to WJFF, to the board, or to anybody else, to get a legal understanding of volunteers as it pertains to, for example, funding, why people can get transportation reimbursement. So I would like to see, and we can put this off, but I think it would be useful to have someone come in who's a professional at managing volunteers and tell us what volunteers do in different capacities, because we have different kinds of volunteers. We have people that are coming in to help us a couple times a year. We have volunteers that are active every day, almost. And so we want to appreciate our volunteers, but we want to have an understanding of them. So if we need a definition, all right, we just need clarity on all of that, because we don't want people to question about who's voting for the volunteer. So again, give us your feedback, give us your questions. We just want clarification and clarity. And please respond to us, and this is our working points. Let's see. So we talked about the fact that the CPB rules and the CPB language, we have to comply with the open meetings and so forth. the CPB language, the executive session language, we have to be clear about that. I think you know what we're talking about. Specific thing, we have to be clear about the notice of special meetings, the meetings without notice, the actions, all of those, the executive committee, all that has to be clarified because it's not in the current bylaws and it has to be legal. Also, Article 4B, Section 4, instead of provision describing the role of the station manager, we recommend that the provision be replaced with more general language authorizing WJFF to hire employees and agents. So that's the way a typical nonprofit would go. It looks like, we were speculating, but it looks like language was put in there in the bylaws that gave the station manager autonomy, which is probably not legal, all right, and not with CPB. So we're just visiting that, and again, we want to make things up to speed and clear.
I wonder if I could make a suggestion that you send that around once more to be sure everyone gets it.
Yeah, I promise I will. I'll
and
send
then,
it again.
And then for the next meeting, I will put this at the top of the agenda. Could you pick 2 really dicey things that you want us to chew on and talk about?
Okay.
And I suggest the one be the volunteer election and
Okay.
I don't know what else, but something else. So we can, and then could you also have a timeline for when you want to get this work? You know, what,
Okay.
by December we do this, because then we are going to share this with our community in some
Right.
sense, and when do you want us to do that? But-
Right, okay.
Yeah, Barbara.
I think it would also be helpful, maybe when you get a little further along, if you had like a red line copy of the current bylaws with, you know, this gets struck out and this, you know, is the language that would get substituted
Yeah, in
instead.
other words, do you want a copy of this, like all of these changes and things?
Yeah, I mean, like if you go
There's a
into
way
the,
of-
you know, go in with revisioning.
Right.
So that you would see, you know, what.
Yeah.
The markup, yeah.
Because Lori's markup is really clear, and then what we have sitting down is pretty clear
Right.
too.
And maybe it's when you get a little further along, but I
Okay.
think that would also help us to understand what's
Yeah,
going on
because,
in the end.
you know, going back and forth is tricky, okay?
Yeah, I don't want to add to your already considerable burden, but what about bylaws concerning termination of employees and what rules you
Yeah,
follow?
we're looking at all of that.
Yeah,
We're absolutely looking at all of that. And I will resend Lori's summary for you to look at.
We really appreciate, I'm sure all of us appreciate going through this. It is, to say it's boring doesn't even come close. It is so important. And we knew that when the troubles happened, our bylaws did nothing to help us. So we're I think all of us, if I can say appreciation to you and Lori for sticking with it. And we have a good lawyer, and it will be 100 times better come for 12-14.
Yeah, I want to state that I think Lori is fabulous. She really knows her work. And I also want to say that, you know, we really want more of you to come in on this because, you know, Lori is the expert and I'm interested. But, so don't feel that you have to, because I know how hard you're all working, don't feel that you have to come to every meeting, but, you know, please come in and email
Or just
us.
read the text and send back a note about it. Or if you have a particular concern about about bylaws, one of my suggestions, I think all full-time staff should be approved by the board, the hiring of full-time staff. I just think it makes a lot of sense in such a small agency. So if you have something that's on your wish list, send it around and it'll fly or it won't fly.
Yeah, and if you
But
would.
I think I'd like to move on if we
Yeah,
could.
okay,
'cause
can I be real quick?
You have 1 minute.
Okay, 1 minute. We're also revisiting, that's why I'm going to the top of the list, the grievance process, yada, yada, yada. We're taking the station manager out of something that he shouldn't been in, blah, blah, blah. Grievance procedures, a state license, and dissolution, and that's Article 12.
Good.
Thank you.
So,
Many thanks.
One favor, again, though, when you send your notes to us, please put like attention or subject bylaws so that I can put that in one particular place.
Okay, do we have any new business that needs to be addressed right now?
One item.
Yes.
I just was checking my phone, the buzzed, and I found an email for John.
John, what did you do?
He didn't sign the cards for the Jeff Bank yet. So I got an email from the Jeff Bank saying, please, 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 please help us get John Bachman.
Tell him to open up on a Sunday. Anyway.
So,
Pretty tough, okay.
Okay.
Has everyone else signed?
yeah, evidently.
You live here, I mean.
Yeah, but I'm not here, if they're open before 6 in the morning and after 6 and 6:30 at night,
Was
I'd
there
be there.
anything, I heard some things about youth programming that maybe Jason, and could you, Joe, was it, yeah, could you?
No, I just had an interesting conversation with Jason and Betsy. I wanted to say Liberty. Betsy about the youth program, and we were just talking about what they wanted to do, what they had done in the past, and how they wanted to move forward. And first of all, they were very excited that somebody from the board actually came and had a conversation with them. They said because it hadn't happened before, you know. So they're just having some of the things of going into the schools, talking to the teachers, just to get the kids to be involved in the youth program. So when we have more time and energy, I would like to share some of the ideas that they.
Well, you know, if there's something that relates to money, we have to have that in October, the end of November, if the youth.
Well, that was one of the things they said, that they're going to continue doing whatever they're doing because they're so passionate about the youth radio, but they could do more if they had a budget that they could work with.
We would also need, for the budget, for them to map out exactly what they want to do next year. What are the outcomes or the measures that would be, because there's nobody on our board who's opposed to a youth radio program, and maybe many of us would like it to be more, but there has to be some specificity.
Maybe we could find some funding.
Yes.
Maybe, Barbara Greff is good at this, finding funding for media projects, Manor Inc. being one of our most successful ventures. But, perhaps we could, if they let us know what they need as far as the budget's concerned, we can't make it up, but if, they have $7,000 now, but if they want to expand their program and they need, an extra 5 something to do it, and they can be specific, maybe we can see if we can find a place that can help us fund it. Because I bet you there's a lot of funding for youth-oriented media projects around. Yep, depends on what it is. So they have to be specific, because if you're going to talk to them again, I think that would be great. Yeah.
I've started to look into the board training issue, and I'm going to meet with Sue Courier, who is from the Delaware Highlands Conservancy, on this coming Wednesday at 3 at her office in Conneaut Lake. If anyone have time and would like to join me to begin some discussions about what her thoughts are about board training. I also had prepared for our first executive committee meeting in July just a list of all the to-do things on our plate. And I reworked that by topics. There's one on governance, one on finance, one on, I don't know, there were 4 of them. And I'm going to make it better, and I can get someone who can help me put it better on a spreadsheet or on something. Because there are some things that need to come at the top of the list. We have so many things. It's easy to be, oh, we should do this. Well, yeah, we should, but we could do it next January. So I will rework that. Very good. And we're going to meet Friday, so maybe we could look at that on Friday. Are there any other new business items?
When did you say the board training day was?
It's Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Okay, the old board had this practice of listing action steps, and I'm going to read what we have so far. Do we need a motion re taxes that Barbara was supposed to look into?
No, I think what we need is to, this is a reality, this is nothing that we can decide to do, but I need to get it to Lori McFadden, because it's an attorney
That's
thing.
the one about Pennsylvania.
Right.
Okay, that's
we're done with our New York taxes and our other taxes, we're all paid, everything is good, but
Okay,
this
so-
is Pennsylvania.
Okay, and Adam is going to do the link on the website about the CPB audit and our reply. That was one thing
Right.
we agreed to do. The deed restrictions, you're looking into that,
Yes.
Pat? And then Kurt is going to work with a group of people on presenting in November an idea about a program focus, a mission statement. Barbara Demarest will report on what you've learned about governance at the October meeting. The bylaws, we're going to get at the top of the agenda next time, and you will ask us to pick out a couple of things that need our discussion. Is there any other action step? There were a few last time that we have not addressed. I'm going to put them together. The problem is sometimes the meeting goes so fast, I don't know who's supposed to do what. But I'm going to put those in anyway, and I was away, and so I didn't. And then we will have a report next time about the volunteer, from volunteers, and maybe an update on those meetings that you had and how well you thought to implementing the suggestions that were
Yeah, I'd
given.
like to know that. That was good. Those were good meetings.
Because it went so well.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
Any other things closing?
No.
And shall we meet next time back at the other meeting place? The benefits are it's internet connection and there's a screen.
Right.
This table arrangement's, I think, nicer, especially for Isaac.
Yeah.
Here. So do we want to come here? I also have a screen at home.
Well, can we arrange the tables over there this way, or?
There's only one table.
There's only that one table. There's not a fold-up table in the back, or?
Adam, can we have on our webpage a place to click for the board meeting video? Is that possible?
Yeah, we can put a link on the homepage, absolutely. We just need to find a live streaming video service that we decide we want to use and stick with.
So you mean this video?
This video, absolutely, yes. Yeah, what I'll do, yeah, maybe we
Do we
can
need
talk.
to vote on that?
No.
We agreed to do it.
We'll do it.
We did that already.
I think that's something that it's kind of within the purview of the station managers.
Yeah.
I would hope, yeah.
I think it's going to depend on availability.
Okay, so if you have any preference on where we're meeting,
Yeah,
it doesn't.
here.
Here.
It gives him a lot more space.
It is more space here.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we don't have the internet, so, don't we have another table there if it's just an issue of arranging the tables? I mean,
Not in the back room? They don't
No.
have
No, there's not. I mean, we can
Okay.
bring one from the station.
This has better
Yeah.
accessibility too. It's not
Does.
that long staircase.
And it has 2
Yeah.
restrooms.
Right.
Oh, okay, so we will try and book it for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unless there are comments from the public?
I'm getting
Yes,
somebody's
Barbara.
wireless.
Comments from the public?
Comment.
Barbara has
I
comments.
made a 5-point bullet point list. I don't expect anyone to comment back to me, but I just wanted to read what my comments are, and I could write a note to the board. And I'm leaving some things off this list. But one is, in the bylaws, I would like to see the bylaws entertain other form of election to the board, other than internally on the board and the volunteers. What about the community? There's other ways to skin that cat. And I want to make the point that the volunteer election, that other avenue, the alternative avenue, is what saved our, pardon my French, ass. And I'm looking at Sonia because she saved our ass in particular. This discussion of size of station, and they're bigger than ours in terms of their budgets, and we can't really look to them maybe for their structure. We could find somebody who's been at those stations for a long time and find out how they did it back when they were our size, because they are obviously successful since they grew to twice our size. Program goals, as Kurt was pointing out, the CPB language presumes that there are program goals, so I would underscore the importance of that. It's not just a nice thing, but the CAB has got to know what the program goals are and see if we're living up to them. And we didn't talk about it this time, but in the past I have written to the board, not this board, but when it was just 3 members, about trying to recover those funds. The $50,000, the separation package, all that. You're in deficit. I know it's hard, but I encourage thinking about that. I really do. And last, we talked about compliance with the ADA, the American with Disabilities Act, for access, and Honesdale out of compliance, right? In a fairly serious way. No elevator? No elevator. Okay, so that's just, I wanted to throw that in there.
And
That's
there's no signage. There's lots of issues there too. So it's like, yeah, but whatever. We'll work on it. Thank you.
A motion to adjourn from Mike, seconded by...
All of us?
And we're finished at whatever time. It's 9:20.